Chapter 639. As a big client who could attend the banquet, Brother Zoe and Boss Zoe naturally had bodyguards. However, the overwhelming disadvantage in numbers was enough to make any professional bodyguard lose the courage to confront them head-on. 5 meters away, the bodyguards hired with a lot of money were quite professional, and they were trying their best to squeeze in. However, any one of the audience in front of them was blocked by the big bodyguard, who had a strong physique, and it was difficult for him to move forward. For a few seconds, Boss Zoe thought he was going to be beaten up. He was not stupid, and he immediately activated the help function on the dial. This was the promise of the organizing committee for the safety of the guests. However, to his surprise, the audience did not pay much attention to him. 2 or 3 seconds later, under the call of the young man who still looked like a child, they continued to gather there. Naturally, Brother Zoe and the others were kept outside the circle. The young man's voice came from the center of the circle. A meaningful configuration must have a material foundation. Simple, switching circuits can be done with a little guidance. Complicated ones need to be converted. The noise around the stage interfered with the voice transmission. The intermittent sentences also made Boss Zoe, his companions, and his bodyguards confused. They did not know what these people were doing. They were obviously VIPs of the banquet, but they wanted to have a class in such a fun place. Was there something wrong with their brains? But this was also good. They were all people with families and businesses, and they were all here to have fun. No one wanted to have a conflict because of something inexplicable. Boss Zoe gave his bodyguard a look, and the latter understood. Now that there was no obstacle, he came over to cover him and cut off the audience as much as possible. They retreated along the inside of the corridor, trying to leave this place of trouble. At this time, the service staff of the banquet contacted Brother Zoe through the communication device. Chairman Zoe, we have locked on to your position and ensured that you are under surveillance. Your personal butler will arrive in 1 minute to deal with the relevant matters. Yes, 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 yes. Boss Zoe heaved a sigh of relief, but he also felt a little regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would have brought his personal butler with him. He should not have despised the butler just because he was a middle-aged man about his age. If the butler had been with him just now, at least there would have been a buffer. Even though there would be people coming to deal with the dangerous situation soon, Boss Zoe and his group were not willing to wait around. While those people were focused on the lesson, they continued to retreat. Right at this moment, when the two performances were intersecting, the surrounding noises dropped a lot. In the middle of the crowd, the youth's voice also became clear. Basically, conversion is still necessary. In terms of the composition of the spiritual plane, those that did not enter the abyss were mostly turbid streams. The soul energy of an ability user and a normal person is essentially the same under normal circumstances. Damn, he's a fraud. Mr. Zoe was a well-known figure in Sia City and a frequent customer of the Starry Sky Club. He was quite knowledgeable. He immediately classified Luo Nan in his mind. There was no way to reason with this nagging fellow. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. If he couldn't afford to provoke him, then why couldn't he hide? Just at this moment, the voice of the young faker rang in his ears again. He seemed to be giving an example. Just like us and the few over there, it's not so easy to distinguish between us at the low-end spiritual level. Meh. Boss Zoe suddenly felt his scalp tingle. He saw that group of dangerous people all turned their heads, their sharp eyes focused on his face. F***ck me. Boss Zoe was pinned down by over 20 gazes. Not a single one of these people seemed to be good people. Even though there were bodyguards in front of him, it was as if Boss Zoe had been impaled into a wall. His entire body froze in place, unable to move a single step. Only his bladder instinctively contracted and expanded. Where's the housekeeper? Why hasn't his personal housekeeper arrived yet? Excuse me, excuse me. Hurried footsteps rang out from the other end of the corridor. For a second, Boss Zoe practically believed that his personal housekeeper had arrived. But then he realized that it was really hard for a middle-aged man of his age to have such a clear and sweet-sounding female voice. A group of people appeared in the corridor as the voice rang out. 3 of them had stage makeup on, and they all wore the same black long women's suits. They completely covered their shorts, exposing their snow-white long legs. Without a doubt, this was the BHD girl group that had just performed on the small stage with great success. The 3 beautiful girls were dripping with sweat due to the high intensity of the dance. Clara, who had a slightly weaker body, had her hair wet. But their already excellent skin quality seemed to reflect a layer of jade light. It was extremely dazzling. And this made things difficult for the stylist, who needed to quickly touch up their makeup. He walked backwards the entire way, completely unaware of the dense mass of people behind him. Bai Yu had called out to him early on. She called out to him to pay attention as she passed. Oh, Shui Yuan's life. This is undoubtedly a meeting of fate. Whether he was a true fan or just joining in on the fun, Bamboo Pole was quite engrossed in his role. He saw the BHD trio walk over quickly, and after sighing with emotion in an aria style, he wanted to rush over and ask for an autograph. But just as he took half a step, Luo Nan grabbed him by the arm. Didn't you hear that we need to make way? As a junior in the entertainment world, BHD had a very heavy task to perform tonight. They needed to endlessly switch between various small stages. They really didn't have a chance to catch their breath. This corridor was specially designated by the authorities to be a fast and convenient passageway for actors and actresses to quickly switch between stages. Of course, the appearance of Boss Zhou and the others, including Luo Nan, proved that the organizers had some hidden plans. Luo Nan didn't want to delay the work of the BHD trio, but he underestimated his position in the hearts of this small girl group. Huh? Shredded radish? Mr. Luo? Boss. The 3 beautiful girls all addressed him differently, but their attention was all focused on Luo Nan. Their nearly jogging footsteps all came to a stop. This kind of reaction made Boss Zhou, who was behind the crowd, suddenly realize something. So it was like, don't delay. Do your best. Following Luo Nan's words, the dense mass of people in front of them all moved back under Luo Nan's command. The corridor wasn't wide enough for BHD and their team to quickly pass through. Even though there were no compliments, this kind of action and this kind of effect was enough to satisfy the vanity of these girls. Under Shui Yuan's lead, the 3 girls all bowed in thanks. This way, the little meeting seemed to be coming to an end. But Bai Yu was still a bit unwilling to give up. She had already run 2 steps when she turned around and asked, "What did you think just now?" Bamboo pole, octopus's whistle, and Zhang Yingying's snort mixed together. Luo Nan's mind was in a mess. He subconsciously spat out a word that left a deep impression on him, beauty leg. Bai Yu staggered and turned halfway around. Her snow-white and smooth thighs tightened, nearly giving Luo Nan a knee strike. But in the end, she put one hand on her forehead and bent one leg slightly. She borrowed her excitement to quickly strike a photogenic pose. I think so too. You have a good eye. In the end, the young girl couldn't hold it in any longer. Her face turned red. Luckily, her stage makeup was quite thick and she used a smile to cover it up. She turned around and ran away, giggling and laughing. When she met up with her companions, one of them smacked the back of her head and the other smacked the buttocks. She was severely punished. All she could do was cry out. The members of BHD, who were currently enjoying the most glorious moment of their acting careers, obviously didn't know that there were a few pitiful bugs behind the courteous audience and fans on one side of the corridor. Their eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. They looked like a bunch of half-dead fish. Don't give me an opportunity. Boss Zhou's internal spasms had already affected his stomach function. At this moment, in his blurry vision, a middle-aged man in a classic black suit with a bow tie quietly appeared. This man was none other than Boss Zhou's personal butler. The two had met before when Boss Zhou had entered the venue. It was just that Boss Zhou's brain had been fried back then. He believed himself to be an old player and wanted to do something a bit more exciting, so he refused this service. Now. It wasn't too late. Boss Zoe struggled to speak, but before he could straighten his tongue, he saw his personal butler use impeccable etiquette to bow to the young psychic. It couldn't be considered flattery, but it was a clear and direct choice based on courtesy. It caused Boss Zoe's face to suffer an incorporeal blow. The pain was so great that it suppressed the diffuse internal spasms. The personal butler spoke respectfully. "Mr. Luo, we are very sorry that such an unpleasant matter has occurred." "Oh, it's nothing." Luo Nan swept a glance at Boss Zoe, who was stuck to the wall. He confirmed once more, "There's nothing unpleasant." Strangely enough, when Boss Zoe made eye contact with Luo Nan once more, the restlessness that filled his heart and lungs, as well as the rage that rushed to the top of his head, seemed to have been forcefully stuffed into a freezer. It rapidly cooled and froze. Then his reason returned. He used the most basic knowledge of social relations and basic thinking to quickly piece together a logical chain. The organizer of the grand banquet was the LCRF, the famous Life Cycle Research Fund. Specifically, it was organized by Cloud City Water Village and coordinated by the Starry Sky Club. This kind of power was completely unstoppable in Xia City, not to mention the entire Earth. However, the staff of the organizer would rather offend a major client like him in order to display sufficient politeness and humility in front of the young psychic. Wasn't the truth clear enough? Boss Zoe shivered. A person's perception was always particularly sharp at times like this. So he could faintly sense that his rather clever gang of scoundrels had a similar reaction. Then the young psychic shot him a glance at this time. No emotion could be seen in his eyes, but the more it was like this, the more Boss Zoe found it unbearable. He even felt as if his internal organs had been hollowed out. Only the cold energy known as fear grew from within the black hole, spreading layer by layer. His personal butler was a smooth and slick person, but he was truly unable to make an accurate judgment when faced with this seemingly innocent young man before him. He paused for 2 seconds and could only ask probingly, "Mr. Luo, if you don't mind, I'll take these people." Chapter 640. Compared to mature language and vocabulary, the ability of human body movements to convey information was far too vague. In this current situation, Luo Nan's simple action of raising his hand could be interpreted in a positive way as, "I got it," or "Do whatever you want." It could also be interpreted as, "You shut up," or "Don't be noisy." No matter how smooth and slick the butler was, he didn't dare to make a rash judgment. As for Boss Zoe and the others by the wall, the thumping of their hearts could practically drown out the dynamic music that had just sounded around the stage. "Let's continue." Luo Nan raised his hand. He just had the project team members, who had just given way, come over and discuss again. Boss Zoe looked at the screen of people blocking the young psychic. It was as if he had just woken up from a nightmare. His legs went soft, and he sat against the wall. A bodyguard grabbed him halfway. The butler squeezed out of the crowd at this time and came over to support him. Right now, Boss Zoe had long since forgotten his previous anger. There was only one thought in his mind, and he spoke it out loud. "Let's hurry up and leave." No one had any objections, but their fate tonight was destined to be filled with twists and turns. Boss Zoe's voice hadn't even fallen when Luo Nan's voice lingered in their ears like a lingering nether spirit. If there are no problems with the information, then there really are people who have established relevant illegal configurations through this event. Then the participants, the large number of tourists in Cloud City Water Village who don't know anything, are all targets that can be used. The people beside us are all participants. In an ideal situation, no matter how useful they should occupy a certain position in the illegal configurations. I didn't. Boss Zoe didn't understand at least half of Luo Nan's words, but he was able to understand the most critical part. Clearly, this matter wasn't over yet. Things were already like this, so he couldn't care about anything else. His words of defense blurted out. He was even faster than the gazes of everyone else. The butler's face was a bit stiff. He turned his head to speak, but all he saw was a group of people forming a human wall. Luo Nan didn't pay any attention to the noise outside the wall. He took the opportunity to ask a question. "Where are they inside?" In other words, if you are the designers, How should you use them most appropriately? You can talk about your own views. None of the project team members spoke. They just looked at each other. In the end, Bamboo Pole grinned with a bitter smile. Hold on. Your course is progressing too quickly. We're still learning the basics. It's not like you want us to do independent design. Luo Nan shook his head. Learning the basics requires a basic train of thought, and this train of thought is extremely simple. As I said earlier, any mental construct must have a material foundation. Maybe we don't know what those illegal configurations are, but we can definitely come into contact with some of them. Which one? Bamboo Pole asked on behalf of the other members of the project team. The structure of the human body and soul. Luo Nan casually waved his hand, taking the people in front of him into consideration. I remember saying that in a broad sense, the structure of a person's body and soul is also a type of configuration. Although the efficiency was a bit low, especially on the mental plane, its material foundation gave soul power a characteristic that was hard to change. The structure of inheritance and evolution over thousands of generations had a certain determinism. The material foundation of the human body determines that our bodies of flesh and blood are not as stable as steel or computer programs. There is bound to be a process of ups and downs. The majority of people under normal circumstances do not have a clear direction in their mental activities. The corresponding power flows, disperses, and transforms. Under these circumstances, soul power is like a container riddled with holes. In theory, it is necessary to seal off all other exits in order to allow it to effectively accumulate and operate. Only a single flow of power is given to this power. Cultivators guard their minds internally. Essence is the only one. This is probably the implementation of similar principles. Luo Nan's words were like words spoken on the side of the road to the elites of the project team present. However, some words needed to be said in the context and the identity of the speaker. The members of the project team all listened earnestly. No one, at least on the surface, showed any impatient emotions. There were even some people who tried to follow Luo Nan's train of thought. A young military researcher said, "Teacher Luo, what you mean is that the turbid flow on the mental plane is similar to ineffective waste heat. And in order to form an effective configuration, efficient rules and constraints must be formed. We need to find these rules." No, it should be to find the exit that forms the configuration rules. Zhang Yingying reminded Luo Nan of the identity of this military researcher. Shi Xinhe. Apparently, he has worked in AB team before. Luo Nan nodded slightly. He was expressing affirmation towards Zhang Yingying's intelligence and Shi Xinhe's train of thought. The exit needs to be singular, but the choice of exit is flexible. The human mind has many layers and changes. High-level ideals and beliefs are fine. Low-level emotions and desires are also fine. You still need to make a judgment based on the actual situation. Take today for example. If this New Year's Eve event is indeed a deliberately created environment, then what is the most appropriate choice? Someone else answered before Shi Xinhe could speak. Of course, it's low-level emotions and desires. Luo Nan shook his head. Too crude. Human emotions are complex. The structure of the human body itself is a chaotic system. The brain regions and neurotransmitters involved in nearly every emotion are different. Conversely, the brain regions and neurotransmitter conduction bring about changes in emotions. The relationship between brain regions and neurotransmitter conduction isn't one-to-one. As a designer, as long as the conditions are met, you can randomly choose an exit. You can have over 10 different solutions. The starting point can be located anywhere in the 3 zones, not to mention the labyrinth of the abyssal region. Luo Nan's denial made the majority of people afraid to open their mouths. Instead, Shi Xinhe muttered to himself, in order to crack this design, the fortress must focus on strengthening the detection and sensing module. It involves many layers and many angles. It seems that attack, defense, movement, and detection are the most important of the 4 basic modules. Does Teacher Luo mean to say that this is the focus of our next step of work? Researcher Shi is worthy of being from the AB team. Bamboo Pole clapped his hands on Luo Nan's head and laughed, searching and fighting as one should be the mental side's inclination and advantage. This direction is certainly not a problem. And speaking from a practical point of view, detection and identification is indeed the #1 priority when it comes to catching illegal configurations. Most people came to a sudden realization at this time. Today, Luo Nan didn't just come to scout and teach. He also came to determine the project team's progress plan. Perhaps he also had the idea of observing and promoting talents. Didn't that Shushinha just pop up? For a time, there were those who came to a sudden realization, those who wrung their hands, and those who were envious. Even though the military and political departments dispatched elites with excellent qualities, the subtleties of human nature were not factors that could be completely controlled in the end. Luo Nan remained silent after Bamboo Pole opened his mouth. He just quietly sized up the turbid flow that flowed around him, distinguishing the color changes within. Actually, he had never thought of things in such a complicated way, but letting others think in such a complicated way was a pretty good method. Letting Bamboo Pole worry about it was also pretty good. Brother Bamboo Pole, can I express a bit of a different opinion regarding the word illegal? Suddenly, a female voice cut in. The voice carried a smile that was yet not a smile at the end. It sounded intimate, but the content was thorny. A group of people walked over with quick steps from one end of the corridor as the voice spoke. Leading the group was a middle-aged woman with short hair and a neat temperament. Luo Nan had seen her before. She was the manager of the Starry Sky Club's restaurant department. She was also a good friend of Bamboo Pole, Sun Jai. Luo Nan didn't have any ill feelings towards Sun Jai. He saw this neat woman approach him with a few steps, and he indicated for the surrounding people to make way for her. Sun Jai called out to Bamboo Pole from afar, but she was the first to bow to Luo Nan when she got closer. Her attitude was extremely low. "Teacher Luo, sorry to disturb your lesson." This low attitude just happened to complement the thorny attitude of Bamboo Pole. Overall, she was neither servile nor overbearing. Luo Nan gave a slight smile in response. He knew himself well enough to deal with such a shrewd, capable, and worldly person. He wouldn't forcefully stick his head out, so he let Bamboo Pole deal with her. Bamboo Pole didn't regard himself as an outsider. He laughed and spread his arms open to welcome her. "Oh my, this bro's business is expanding really fast. No wonder you look radiant and overflowing with spring." Sun Jai giggled as she gave him a light hug. She spoke into his ear in a voice that the surrounding people could clearly recognize. "No matter how radiant you look, you can't stand the pressure of one hat after another. Can you give me a chance to defend myself?" "What are you saying?" Sun Jai had already pushed Bamboo Pole away before he could finish speaking. She faced Luo Nan and spoke sternly. "Teacher Luo, if those people just now offended you in any way, I am willing to apologize to you on behalf of these ignorant people." Luo Nan grunted. "There's no need." Sun Jai spoke again. "There are some matters that are quite out of line in this grand banquet. But I ask for Teacher Luo's forgiveness. This routine reception banquet is actually the LCRF's expression of gratitude to our colleagues and customers who support our biotechnology research every year. Since our customers involve all walks of life, in every field, have different requirements, and have different hobbies, as the organizer, and co-organizer, we can only seek the greatest common divisor within the limits of our capabilities." Luo Nan grunted but didn't have much of a reaction. Sun Jai behaved like a diplomat. "I won't deny that many customers use their wealth, power, and other resources to obtain things that this society doesn't advocate, but it doesn't prohibit, in order to obtain a short period of stimulation. But we also do our utmost to restrain these actions within the bounds of legality and compliance." Bamboo Pole faced his old friend and seemed to agree. "That's right. This is a society of law, not a society of morality." Sun Jai glared at him without the slightest bit of concealment. Luo Nan's voice rang in her ears at practically the same time. "Yes. From a technical point of view, there isn't much meaning in distinguishing between legal and illegal configurations on the mental plane before there are legal standards." Quite a few people raised their eyebrows when these words were spoken. Chapter 641. The current Luo Nan was undoubtedly the center of attention of everyone present. The object of his attention was also undoubtedly the object of everyone else's attention. Almost everyone subconsciously cast their attention toward Boss Zhou, examining him and pondering. Boss Zhou had the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle knocked out under the focus of everyone's gazes. He became a complete idiot who stood there, frozen on the spot. While the vast majority of people were watching Boss Zhou, there were also a few people discussing among the crowd. That old lover of yours isn't simple. She dug a trap in a matter of minutes. It's good that our boss Luo is stupid and straightforward. He forcefully got over it. Screw you, old lover. She could even be my mom. Uncle Bamboo Pole, your taste is really heavy. It's fine as long as her taste is good enough. Both sides were thick-skinned. Bamboo Pole couldn't do anything about Zhang Yingying. He could only laugh dryly and get to the point. Sometimes, it's better to be a bit more direct when dealing with things. What are you guys talking about? Octopus was a medical worker and a laborer in biological experiments. This wasn't his field of expertise, so he didn't understand for a moment. But this didn't affect his curiosity. Zhang Yingying pursed her lips. I'm talking about Brother Bamboo Pole's old lover. She started talking about legality and illegality. She has bad intentions. Octopus seemed to understand, but he didn't. He could only ask, is there anything else? Hee. What's a law? It's just a tool for a ruler to protect his interests. Then who's the ruler? This is still undecided for now. But from the knowledge of the vast majority of people, if they had to choose between the expounder and the executor of the law, who would they choose? Would it be us, the mysterious members of the inner world, or would it be the government and the military? Oh, of course it's. Oh my, this sister is from the Starry Sky Club. Octopus wasn't an idiot. He just couldn't wrap his head around it for a moment. He slapped his thigh when he heard this. That's it. Zhang Yingying shot a cold glance at Sun Jiai. If Luo Nan had followed this woman's logic, then he would have thrown the judgment standards and authority of the relevant configurations to the military, which we have no control over. Zhang Yingying wasn't sure if anyone was deliberately eavesdropping on them, so she simply posted it on the psychic wave network. Don't be fooled by the fact that everyone is working on the so-called Fortress project together. The atmosphere is lively, and the researchers are as respectful as primary school students. Even if this group of researchers were to kneel and lick Luo Nan's boots, could they represent the government and the military in kneeling and licking Luo Nan's boots? It's true that the branch cooperates with the military and political departments, but the Starry Sky Club is basically a bastard of the military and political departments. Bamboo Pole coughed. He's not a bastard, he's an LCRF. His bloodline is more mixed. LCRF, also known as the Life Cycle Research Fund, was an important investment fund in the field of biology jointly funded by several top tycoons on the surface. However, its backers were almost certainly some big shots in the political and military circles. Moreover, many forces in the inner world also had shares in it. Don't be fooled by how Tian Bang treated the so-called Grand Banquet as a target, looking like he was about to flip the table. From the perspective of bloodline, this was more like a small experiment conducted within a controllable range. To put it a bit more formally, it was nothing more than a confrontational drill. Disregarding the element of internal strife, there might even be important members of the LCRF in the drill directing department. In the eyes of these people, the branch ability users led by Luo Nan were no different from the so-called creators of the illegal construction. If they were to really dispute over this matter, both sides would go to court. They would be casually manipulated by others. Who knew how long it would take to figure out who was right and who was wrong? Even if they were able to figure things out in a short amount of time, once this matter became a precedent, would they still have to follow the same rules if they were to encounter similar matters in the future? When that happened, the Xia City branch would be handing over the initiative and moral status. It was fine if the two sides were harmonious, but if there really was a conflict, it would be nauseating to death, not to mention anything else. Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole, these two scheming people, couldn't help but feel lingering fear. After Zhang Yingying calmed down, she became very curious. Do you think our boss Luo really doesn't understand, or is he pretending not to understand? Right now, no one could give Zhang Yingying an answer. The core party, Luo Nan, didn't need to give anyone an answer or an explanation. He just glanced at Boss Zhou once more. He didn't want to linger in this cloister that had already been completely cut off. He walked forward without a word. 20 to 30 people naturally followed him forward. In the blink of an eye, the stream of people in the cloister had pretty much dispersed cleanly. Only Boss Zhou's group of people were left standing there stupidly. They were like human stumps. An unknown amount of time passed before Boss Zhou's brain finally recovered to a minimum level of operation. What the hell? What the hell? His mouth muttered curses, but in reality, these curses didn't leave behind any traces in his memory. Someone from his gang of scoundrels asked at this time, "What do we do?" Boss Zhou's mind was restless. He slapped the wall. What do we do? Haven't we had enough yet? We didn't check the almanac before we left today. Let's go back. Let's go back, okay? Boss Zhou's personal butler spoke at this time. Mr. Zhou, tonight's events are absolutely not something we want to see. Boss Zhou wanted to get angry, but he had just confronted a true big shot. He really couldn't bring himself to be angry. He could only chuckle twice. Fine. You don't need to say anything. I crawled out of the corpses of World War III when I was a kid. I know what to endure and what to admit. Just pretend that I never came here tonight. It had to be said that Boss Zhou's behavior was quite straightforward. The problem was that the personal butler didn't loosen his grip. Mr. Zhou, from the standpoint of the Foundation, please give us a chance to make up for it. Boss Zhou was baffled. I don't need any compensation. I want to go home and sleep right now. Of course. This isn't a problem. We just need to adjust our timing and pace. The personal butler finally loosened his grip. But at this time, a dozen or so robust young men wearing black suits walked over from the other end of the cloister. They pressed forward. While Boss Zhou and the others were muddle-headed, they had already assigned their tasks. 2 people were assigned to take care of 1 person. They didn't even miss out on bodyguards. This was a powerful invitation. Please do us the honor. The personal butler's expression was the most professional. At the very least, it was impeccable in form. Let's not talk about how Boss Zhou and the others in the cloister were honored. Luo Nan and his group were already half a floor away. They were truly majestic. Those who didn't know better would think that some big shot had come over for an inspection. At least on the surface, Sun Jiayi really did treat Luo Nan like a big shot. She followed closely along the way. She explained to Luo Nan every time they passed a region. What was the position of this place in tonight's New Year's event? What functions needed to be realized? What emergency plans were in place? She practically treated herself as half a designer. Luo Nan was quite interested in this. This was because this was very much in line with the theory that all configurations must have a material foundation. With Sun Jiayi's explanations and his own overall observation with his mental senses, Luo Nan already had a more intuitive and clear understanding of the overall planning and layout of the grand banquet. This would be very beneficial to the progress of the project. Unfortunately, the time was almost up. Luo Nan raised his wrist to look at his watch. He added a few words in his mind before finally speaking. Thank you for your explanation, Director Sunday. I have benefited greatly from it. I need to go take care of a few private matters. Huh? Forgive me for asking, but does Teacher Luo need any help? Sun Jiayi didn't feel the least bit presumptuous in her words. I'm just going to see my sister. She has a performance on the main stage tonight. She has an appointment with her family. Recently, Luo Nan's status in the inner world had risen with the tide. In a certain sense, it had increased the safety of his family. The big powers were watching closely. Small thieves didn't dare to make a move. It was much better than when the 2000th Miss incident was brewing. Under these circumstances, he was a lot calmer when it came to talking about his family situation. In fact, part of the reason he came tonight was to lead a team for research. But more than that, he came to protect his friends like BHD and his sister, who was also performing at the Cloud City Water Village branch venue. Sun Jai had the status of being the organizer and co-organizer. She certainly had a thorough grasp of this sort of information. She wasn't surprised at all when she heard Luo Nan's words. She said with a smile, "Since it's a family gathering, then we won't disturb you. If Teacher Luo has any needs, just let me know. Tonight at Cloud City Water Village, there's no one more convenient than us to do things." Okay. Luo Nan wasn't polite. He gave a slight nod, but then he thought of something else. He said, "Director's son, that boss Zhou doesn't have anything valuable on him. Don't make things too difficult for him." Zhang Yingying pressed her fingers against her forehead. Her slender hands covered most of her face as she laughed sullenly. She had just said that he didn't understand. She was really sorry. Sun Jai was actually able to maintain her smile unchanging in this awkward situation. "Don't worry, Teacher Luo. Some clients are quite curious. They want to take advantage of this special environment and time to carry out a few special experiments. But overall, there's still a sense of propriety." Luo Nan was amused when he heard her words. "What do you mean by experiments? For example, experiments?" A male voice suddenly appeared, replacing Sun Jai's explanation. At the same time, a tall and thin man appeared in front of the crowd. He took 2 steps forward, but he was promptly blocked by Chini Kuan and Gouda. Sun Jai didn't have such a reaction when she appeared. This also proved that the 2 security elites were intensely vigilant towards the newcomer. The tall and thin man wore a well-ironed formal suit. His appearance was ordinary, but his aura increased. He stood there with a chuckle, looking very calm. He didn't care about Chinikuan and Gouda's obstruction at all. Or it could be said that he didn't care at all. Separated by the wall of people, the person spoke in a manner that was neither fast nor slow. "Mr. Luo, your subversive expression on the mental plane has caused many people to become interested in the basic structure of this place. We should take advantage of this event to design a few experiments. It'll be convenient for us to compare notes with you, Mr. Luo, in the future. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since this field has been this lively." Zhang Yingying frowned. She moved closer to Luo Nan's ear and whispered, "This person is." Chapter 642. Luo Nan spoke straightforwardly, causing Zhang Yingying and a few other friends who were most familiar with him to be stunned. They could not understand how Luo Nan knew this person for a time. It must be known that secret orders were not like the Ability User Society. All of their members could be found on the website. These orders always pursued mysticism, especially the middle and upper echelons. Most of them lived in seclusion and rarely came out. Rumors and all sorts of intelligence were mixed together. It was hard to remember without specialized research. Li Taixing seemed to be a bit surprised. He chuckled, "Teacher Luo, who has always immersed himself in research, actually knows my name? Then I am truly overwhelmed by the favor. My efforts on cages and configuration theory were not in vain." He changed the way he addressed Teacher Luo, but the smile on his face was a bit subtle. It would be more accurate to describe him as frivolous. Before Luo Nan could say anything, Zhang Yingying let out a low snort. According to the intelligence of the hidden indigo firm, Li Taixing was known for being amiable on the outside but arrogant on the inside. He was an extremely tough negotiator. The reason why he was not described as an expert was because he had truly negotiated very few difficult cases. This fellow was simply the loudspeaker and megaphone of the Order of Justice's power. She saw him use the word "I" 3 times in a row in 3 sentences. He had an attitude of, "I am the center of everything." Even if his true personality was different from what was reported in the intelligence, the difference would not be too great. This fellow suddenly appeared in Xia City. It was hard for people to not think about complicated things. Zhang Yingying immediately sent this new intelligence to the firm and the relevant departments of the Xia City branch. She wanted to discuss things with Bamboo Pole and the others, but she heard Luo Nan speak courteously in a very practiced manner. I heard the word configuration from others, and then I began to research and apply it. One of them was Mr. Child of your order. Your order's research in this area should be much deeper than mine. Mr. Li, there is no need to be polite. The smile on Li Taixing's face faded a bit when he heard Child's name. There had always been a serious conflict between the secular side and the truth side within the order of justice. Almost every believer was unable to avoid choosing a side. Unfortunately, Child was a capable general of the truth side when it came to these political coordinates, while Li Taixing was a staunch supporter of the secular side. The two had even clashed and dueled twice, let alone being friends. Therefore, Li Taixing deeply suspected that Luo Nan knew what was going on inside and that Luo Nan had deliberately used Fairchild to attack him. Li Taixing had really wronged Luo Nan, but in a certain sense, he had underestimated Luo Nan. Luo Nan was not aware of the twists and turns between Li Taixing and Fairchild. The reason he could recognize Li Taixing was because he had been in charge of the negotiations between headquarters and the Order of Justice. Luo Nan had been monitoring the situation on the Pacific Ocean nearly 24/7 due to the fact that it involved the grand plan of killing Gong Qi. He had seen Li Taixing engage in a battle of words with important members of headquarters many times. Sometimes, Li Taixing had his arm around headquarters shoulder to shoulder. He had seen it many times, so of course he had to pay attention. Speaking of which, for the past 2 days, he had been wholeheartedly studying the information left behind by his mother and had not paid attention to the new movements over there. Therefore, Luo Nan and Li Taixing exchanged a few words of nonsense with each other. Their intentions were to gather intelligence. Luo Nan shot a glance over as his thoughts spun. He discovered another familiar face. Zheng Xiao. This person had once teamed up with An Wang. They could be considered to have crossed paths during the incident at Frost River Reality back then. After An Wang's fate was unknown, Zheng Xiao became the temporary person in charge of the Order of Justice in Xia City. Zheng Xiao and Luo Nan's believer, Bays, were one civil and one military. They supported each other and barely managed to preserve a portion of the Order of Justice's properties in Xia City. However, they no longer had a sense of existence. Oh, Zheng Xiao had come, but Bays was nowhere to be seen. Also, Bays hadn't warned Li Taixing, a direct secret-bound first ablatum of the Order of Justice, that he had come to Xia City. Did he give himself away? Or was he completely marginalized? Luo Nan pondered Li Taixing, and Li Taixing pondered Luo Nan. Both sides were unable to grasp the main points. Unfortunately, Li Taixing still wanted to give a response. He could only deliberately bypass Fairchild and put on a fake smile. It is said that the accomplished are the teachers. While the vast majority of people are still tossing and turning about black mass and white witchcraft, Teacher Luo has used the format to formulate arguments, deciphered the meaning of the cage, and expounded on the marvels of configuration. He has seen through many mysteries with a single sentence. The title of teacher is not something that comes out of thin air. Luo Nan really liked this topic. He just so happened to see Zheng Xiao, so he returned the favor. Your Honorable Order uses the evolution field to propel the projection of the scales of truth. It is the most ingenious and grand soul strength transformation technique I have ever seen. It is said that a tall building rises from the ground. With this kind of transformation technique, the Order of Justice should be unrivaled in the world when it comes to research on the basic structure of the mental plane. You have this kind of foundation, yet you still want to strive for perfection. The research spirit of your Honorable Order is truly admirable. Li Taixing had managed to maintain a smile with great difficulty when Luo Nan's seemingly polite words entered his ears, but it nearly collapsed. The word **** swayed at the corner of his mouth twice before he swallowed it back down with great difficulty. Many people saw Li Taixing's unsightly expression. Those who understood the situation better, such as the intelligence expert Zhang Yingying and the Secret Order's research expert Bamboo Pole, could not help but snicker in their hearts. According to a few reliable and unreliable rumors, the Order of Justice rose to power because their first-generation First Ablatum coincidentally discovered the ultimate killing weapon, the Scales of Truth. He borrowed the power of this top-notch sacrificial weapon to become one of the most powerful beings on this planet in a short amount of time. No one could deny the talent of the Order of Justice's first-generation First Ablatum, but at the same time, there was a consensus in the industry. Many of the techniques and theories of the Order of Justice were established by reverse engineering the mighty power of the Scales of Truth. Even though it could not be confirmed that the foundational theories of the Order of Justice were flawed, this was indeed a reason for some powers to denounce and ridicule the Order of Justice. Of course, Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole did not believe that Luo Nan had done this deliberately. However, the more unintentional his words were, the more hurtful they were. Sure enough, Luo Nan did not specifically target anything. He even temporarily forgot about Gong Qi, Baize, and other practical problems because of the topic of this domain. Instead, he focused on a new topic, expanding his train of thought once more. He began to discuss with Li Taixing. First ablatumly, are the experiments conducted by your honorable order the same as those conducted by others? Li Taixing reluctantly responded, there are some differences. Luo Nan shook his head. If you're talking about structural verification experiments on the mental plane, then I don't believe that the direction of your Order of Justice's experiments will be consistent with our project team and the vast majority of ability users of the mental side. Li Taixing was stunned. What do you mean? Luo Nan said, it doesn't matter what the nature of the various experiments First Ablatum Li has mentioned. It doesn't matter if it's black mass, white voodoo, or Eastern Taoist techniques. They can all be viewed as configurations or variations of configurations. Since this is the case, we must follow the fundamental principles of configuration. We must design according to the nature of the mental plane. Your honorable order is in the abyssal region. There was a limit to Li Taixing's patience. He interrupted Luo Nan's words. Teacher Luo, you misunderstand. The majority of our related experiments are conducted in the Three Zones region. Oh, you've already rejected this traditional concept. What should we call it now? Mental turbid? Of course we know that the abyssal region is a kind of nature. The construction and design of the abyssal region requires a qualitative change. Luo Nan shook his head and interrupted, it's not the same. The difference doesn't lie in the abyssal region or the abyssal region. It lies in the construction of the system itself. Oh. We all know that it's impossible to construct a configuration in the abyssal region when the soul strength of an ability user is still trapped in a cage. It's even more impossible for the general mental turbid to construct a configuration in the abyssal region. Hold on. Isn't there still the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress? There's also the Scales of Truth of Justice of your order. Forgive me for not being clear on the corresponding system of your order, but I assume that the Scales of Truth are used as a foundation for construction. I'll use this name for the time being. You don't mind, right? Li Taixing's lips twitched. It's simple and clear. Luo Nan laughed and continued, whether it's the Scales of Truth or the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress, they can organize and transport the consciousness within the cage to the abyssal region. This is precisely where the value of configurations lies. But at the end of the day, it is the most common principle. A change in quantity can bring about a change in quality, and the combination of structures can make this change more efficient. In the end, it just depends on where the direction of the change is. Li Taixing subconsciously turned his head and exchanged glances with Xing Xiao. But all he saw was confusion. What in the world are you trying to say? Luo Nan actually wanted to have a good discussion with Li Taixing, but when he opened his mouth again, he discovered that there really wasn't enough time. In the end, he decided to make a long story short. His tone was quite hurried. The inclination of the system determines the direction of the configuration itself. From what I can see, the Ring of Blood Intent Fortress should be classified as a tool type. It's like a spaceship assembled from parts. Through operation, everyone's strength is gathered together to charge into the abyssal region. It is a vehicle that carries soul strength. Its other functions can be created and assembled. It can also be dismantled and discarded. Just like what our project is doing right now. As for the Scales of Truth, it should be a biological type. Oh, perhaps a plant type would be more accurate? This is my estimation. The entire system of the scales of truth may be an inseparable organic whole. It can have countless sides, but it must have a true and complete appearance. It is like a large tree growing in the abyssal region. Its branches, leaves, and trunk grow within the turbulence. At the same time, there is an enormous root system that resides within and beneath the abyssal region. It absorbs nutrients from all levels. Then through various channels and methods, it is digested and absorbed by the entire system. In this way, one is manufacturing parts, while the other is developing roots. How can their natures be the same? The entire audience was silent. Perhaps no one could completely understand Luo Nan's words. But if they could understand a bit of what Luo Nan was saying from a macroscopic perspective, then they would have some thoughts and gains. At the very least, it was a kind of understanding. Chapter 643. The atmosphere of Luo Nan and Li Taixing's exchange was heavy and oppressive. 700 meters away from this group of people, Fei Jin wore a conservatively styled evening gown that accentuated her figure. She paced back and forth in the room. The virtual interface inside was playing the scene of the scene 700 meters away. The content made Fei Jin. More accurately speaking, it made the controller behind Fei Jin rather irritated. Yin Luo was still in a temporary stronghold several dozen kilometers away. She had been controlling Fei Jin to make the final preparations. She would appear before Luo Nan when the opportunity arose to carry out the relevant plan. But she never expected that she would encounter such a scene when she used her authority in the LCRF to remotely observe and collect Luo Nan's position and other relevant information through the monitoring system. This person. Is he crazy? Her voice dissipated within the room, but she didn't receive any response. Yin Lu turned to look at Mrs. Halder and saw her boss quietly sitting in a rocking chair. Her eyes were slightly closed. It seemed that she wasn't paying attention to the situation over at Cloud City Water Village. Or perhaps she didn't care about this matter at all. Didn't care? How was that possible? Yin Lu didn't believe that her boss didn't have any ripples in her heart. At the very least, she knew that the feelings in her heart were 10 times more complicated than what she had said. As a priest of the order who understood the fundamental marvels of the solidified configuration of the Abyss region, Yin Lu had always prided herself on being wise. She had made some preparations. Ever since the 14th, when Luo Nan brought hundreds of tourists to break into the Abyss region in one fell swoop and engraved his subordinates' traces semi-permanently, she knew that according to the direction of Luo Nan's research, it was only a matter of time before he touched upon the foundation of the various secret orders. But she never expected that the final execution would come so quickly. A minute ago, she was in control of the core secrets. She was destined to control this order organization with nearly half a century of history. But at this very moment, the treasure that she had always carefully protected had been revealed in front of everyone's eyes. Someone was flipping through it and playing with it without a care. The last bit of luck in her heart vanished like smoke in a puff of smoke. Plant type? Tool type? Such a fitting and deadly description would probably appear on the desks of the leaders of the inner world and even the various powers of the secular society. Not only did Luo Nan's explanation penetrate the essence of the solidified configuration of the Abyss region, he even dissected the difference between the order configuration and the self-constructed configuration from a more objective angle. He tore down the final piece of the secret order system. After Shaman, the devil, the divine, the enchanting beauty, or the ugly monster, could only be judged by the more and more people who knew the truth. To the Blood Flame Order, to all secret orders, this was a sudden storm. I really want to kill him. Half a second later, Yin Lu realized that she had actually muttered it out loud. On the rocking chair, Lady Halder's eyes were still closed. Her body swayed gently, and a low voice flowed out from between her teeth. Both are expressing one's thoughts, yet there's actually no value in comparing them. I might as well do something more valuable. Yin Lu was speechless. At this moment, Luo Nan, who was far away in Cloud City Water Village, displayed an apologetic expression. This is an experience from several months ago. It gave me a bit of an impression. It was very blurry at the time, but it became clear in the past few days. I made some deductions, but I can't rule out the possibility that there's a problem with my memory. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Without waiting for Li Taixing to respond, Luo Nan tapped his wristband. It's about time. I need to hurry over. First oblatumly, even though the nature of our experiments are different, we can still exchange basic principles. I hope that there will be a chance to talk again later. See you all later. Luo Nan was the first to leave after he finished speaking. A long line of people followed behind him. Sun Jie didn't move. She stared at the backs of Luo Nan and the others. A moment later, she let out a long sigh. Are there really people in this world who are born with knowledge? Li Taixing didn't speak again. He didn't show any expression or movement. He just silently watched Luo Nan leave. If he didn't do this, he might not be able to control himself and expose his killing intent in a straightforward manner. Li Taixing turned around and left after Luo Nan and the others entered the elevator. He didn't even say goodbye to Sun Jie and the others. Zheng Xiao silently followed behind him. There were also several people from the Xia City branch of the Order of Justice behind them. Ahead of them, Li Taixing walked faster and faster. It looked like he was returning to the lounge they were in before. Sure enough, Li Taixing returned to his starting point a few minutes later. Zheng Xiao followed Luo Nan inside. He sensed a strange aura within the room the moment he entered. He waved his hand at the attendants behind him, telling them to wait outside. After the arrangements were made, Zheng Xiao closed the door. He could clearly feel the slightly warped layout of the air in this room. This was an illusion technique that was secretly passed down within the Order of Justice. In this way, no matter what monitoring equipment was placed here, it would all become ineffective within the chaotic light and sound wave structure. Even a master of mental senses like Luo Nan would arouse the vigilance of the caster if he were to forcefully break through this barrier. Li Taixing clearly displayed a posture of wanting to discuss things in secret. Zheng Xiao actually let out a breath of relief. Being able to consider the issue of confidentiality proved that this secret-bound first oblatum, who temporarily managed the affairs of the Xia City branch, still maintained a minimum level of clarity. A mere second later, Zheng Xiao wanted to revise his judgment. Li Taixing didn't sit down within the room. Instead, he stood in the middle of the hall, staring at Zheng Xiao, who had just closed the door and turned around. I need to get rid of Luo Nan immediately. Hiss. Zheng Xiao suddenly shivered and subconsciously drew in a breath of cold air. Almost instinctively, he set up another layer of illusion barrier. After doing this, he could no longer maintain his low-key and reserved appearance. He suppressed his voice and said, "Don't worry. First oblatumly, be careful with your words." Li Taixing laughed when he saw Zheng Xiao's appearance. What do you think the Xia City branch will think after what just happened? What will they think when they realize that we laid down 2 layers of illusion barriers for a secret discussion? It's better than you pointing at their noses and shouting about killing. Zheng Xiao wouldn't say this sort of silent criticism out loud. He could guess the reason behind Li Taixing's great killing intent, so he took a roundabout way to persuade Li Taixing, first oblatumly, although Luo Nan is gifted by a god, his temperament and experience are lacking. The logic of his words often transcends the horizon. He might not have done it on purpose. Li Taixing directly interrupted him, gifted by a god? Do you also believe that there are people who are born with knowledge in this world? This. How about this? Let's do a multiple choice question. Huh? A single choice question. There are a total of 3 choices, A, B, and C. Li Taixing didn't give Zheng Xiao the chance to refuse. He directly gave the question. Luo Nan is gifted by a god, born with knowledge. B. There are no people who are born with knowledge in this world. Luo Nan was able to do this because he received a good education. He had one or a few good teachers who imparted a complete system of knowledge to him. C. There are no people who are born with knowledge in this world. With Luo Nan's family background, he doesn't have the time, energy, or conditions to learn such a complete and advanced system of knowledge from a teacher. He has other channels to obtain knowledge, and the current him is very likely to be nothing more than a plagiarist and a porter who borrows this channel. Which one do you choose? Zheng Xiao laughed bitterly, but he still hoped to persuade Li Taixing. He deliberated his response. Now that you say it like this, being born with knowledge is indeed the least likely option. But if it's a teacher, for example, his grandfather who has already gone mad, and his parents who have already been confirmed dead. Li Taixing sneered. Ever since Luo Nan's fame rose to prominence, various powers have conducted research and excavations into his family's circumstances as well as his grandfather's formatting theory. But what was the result? This. Too many people have been disappointed. The classical theory of formatting theory is still a freak that is a mixture of classical philosophy and neurobiology. Perhaps this theory does indeed possess a certain amount of influence in the wilderness, but compared to the rapid development of the archetype format in the last 10 years, this theory has already fallen behind in all aspects. Li Taixing stared at Zheng Xiao with a stern expression. Do you think that Luo Nan, a 15 or 16-year-old kid, is able to push this theory to such an inconceivable degree under the premise that he isn't gifted by God? The consecutive rhetorical questions made it hard for Zheng Xiao to parry. He could only laugh bitterly after bitterly. Li Taixing helped Zheng Xiao come to a conclusion. All right. Using the simplest method of elimination, we will inevitably choose C. Since this is the case, where does the channel come from? Where does the system of knowledge come from? Li Taixing's eyes sparkled with light right now. Zheng Xiao's heart thumped. He combined it with his own experiences, and he suddenly understood what sort of judgment and plan Li Taixing had in the end. Under these circumstances, Zheng Xiao didn't want Li Taixing to go to extremes no matter what. He racked his brains for a moment and finally braced himself to say, the problem lies in the fact that even option C itself can undergo further decomposition. Further decomposition? Li Taixing raised his eyebrows, then he laughed out loud. I know that there are quite a few people who believe that Jin Tong is related to Luo Nan's cage and configuration theory. Indeed, such a saying was popular right now. The main reason was that Luo Nan had proposed this theory was extremely close to the time when he killed Jin Tong. Luo Nan had indeed taken out a picture of Jin Tong's iconic headband in class on the 14th of this month. This fellow Jin Tong possessed an extraordinary electromagnetic domain that could be said to transcend the era. His extraordinary power had always been an existence that every major power coveted. After all, Earth's science and technology were still unable to escape the influence of the electrical age in the foreseeable future. Jin Tong had always kept this matter a secret for many years. It could be considered a major unresolved case. If Luo Nan's cage and configuration theory came from Jin Tong's legacy, or if it was a combination of this legacy and formatting theory, then the chain of reasoning could be considered relatively complete. However, Li Taixing didn't approve of this conjecture. If Jin Tong's destiny included the content of configuration, then why haven't I seen him become a master in this field after so many years? In terms of talent, intelligence, Jin Tong is in the upper middle of the top 100 powerhouses of the entire world. He's a 1 in a million character. Could he be that much worse than Luo Nan? He paused for a moment before speaking his final opinion. In comparison, there's an unlucky bastard in the headquarters of the Ability User Society. He said something that the vast majority of people believe to be nonsense. In fact, it really should be nonsense. It's an irresponsible conjecture that is more realistic. Priest Zheng, you should know what I mean. The bitterness in Zheng Xiao's smile had already seeped into his bones. Li Taixing didn't care what Zheng Xiao thought. He spat out 4 syllables, one word at a time. Chapter 644. Luo Nan and his group filled the large-capacity elevator car to the brim. Luo Nan was going to go to a private location next. Of course, he couldn't bring these 20 people with him. They had to be separated. But they didn't part ways here. Speaking of which, tonight's banquet had yet to officially begin. According to Tian Bang's intelligence and Sun Jiai's previous introduction, they had to wait until the end of the public New Year's Eve event. The men and women participating in the banquet had established their initial goals. Of course, they had to set up a few bets. Wine, women, avarice, and temper were all in their respective positions. Only then would the true carnival begin. The banquet wouldn't end in a single night. According to past experiences, the bets would grow larger and larger, and the emotions of the participants would grow higher and higher. Many activities, especially gambling games, would need to be postponed and the scope would continue to expand. Perhaps at that time, the entire Xia city would become a gambling table for certain people. It didn't matter if they were scheming or emotional. If they didn't toss and turn to their heart's content, then it wouldn't be a carnival. Team 1 is on standby at Aurora Cloud City. Team 2 is the same. Focus on monitoring the high-altitude casino. Octopus was responsible for assigning tasks, arranging manpower, and setting up observation points to monitor the physical and mental states of the participants. This was a brain-burning task. It needed to be adjusted according to the actual situation. So, after entering the elevator, he discussed the overall layout of Cloud City Water Village with the relevant people in charge until his mouth was dry. In the end, he was truly annoyed to the extreme. He mumbled, "A bunch of scum are messing around here and we've become eavesdroppers. Boss Luo, if we don't seize the opportunity to catch a few of them and teach them a lesson, our brothers will feel unbalanced." Bamboo Pole seconded, "This is a good suggestion. Otherwise, doctors are the ones with poisonous hearts. Get lost. Who doesn't know that you're a regular at this event? It's not easy for you to calm down this year. Now you bite down to the bone in the blink of an eye. We're familiar with each other. I can sue you for slander if you speak carelessly." Zhang Yingying mercilessly exposed Bamboo Pole, "Come on. Who doesn't know that you took over Gao Daming's position because you're familiar with the events and can be a staff officer? Back then, someone made a solemn vow that he would pass on his experience and correct his mistakes. Why are you acting all high and mighty now?" The three of them were used to being together. They mingled together when they went out on missions and played games. They were very casual when they cracked jokes. However, they had ulterior motives for their glib talk. After going back and forth for a few rounds, they saw that a certain master did not pay any attention to the many crosstalk comedians. He lowered his head and pondered. The few of them exchanged glances. "There's a situation. Have you finally come to your senses? You're not regretting it, are you?" The three of them had the same thought. After all, Luo Nan's plant type and tool type, as a comparison, had sounded quite impressive at the time. It was hard to avoid the feeling of feeling dizzy after thinking about it a bit more in the future. The elevator reached the designated floor at this time. A group of people surrounded Luo Nan as they walked out, drawing the curious gazes of quite a few tourists. According to the plan, it was time for them to go their separate ways and reconvene after midnight after the New Year's Eve performance. But right at this moment, Zhang Yingying discovered that Luo Nan's gaze had drifted away. He looked pensive as he cast his gaze towards a certain crowded area. It seemed that he had discovered something. When Zhang Yingying looked over, she found nothing. Luo Nan's attitude inevitably caused people to suspect whether or not he was considering the problem of Li Taisheng and the order of justice. Zhang Yingying clenched her teeth. She was just about to speak when she heard Luo Nan suddenly sigh. Deep resentment. "Oh my, so you know." Zhang Yingying let out a sigh of relief when she heard this. She gave him a free eye roll. "You know too. Do you believe that Li Taisheng wanted to swallow you alive? That's too simple and direct. There's not enough referential value." "What the hell? I'm saying that Li Taisheng's hostility is too obvious. The direction is easy to guess. It's nothing more than the intrinsic problem of the order's solidifying configuration in the Abyss region. Perhaps the Gate of Truth or something is also involved." "Nonsense. The Gate of Truth." Zhang Yingying's voice suddenly rose in pitch. She was so shocked that she forgot to close her mouth. "Bullshit. Why would something like that look for you?" Luo Nan laughed. It's probably the nonsense of some people. There's also a bit of reasoning involved. Li Taixing should be the type of person who pursues rationality. Laugh, laugh, laugh. Things are already like this, yet you can still laugh. Zhang Yingying didn't say anything further. She operated on the psychic wave network, informing the big shots of the branch and the firm of the most recent situation. Since the Gate of Truth was involved, they needed to make preparations early. Hey, wait a minute. Zhang Yingying reacted halfway through her speech. There were no signs at all. She didn't see Luo Nan and Li Taixing discuss this sort of information. How did the Gate of Truth pop out? The atmosphere of the scene became very subtle because of the term Gate of Truth. It was too sensitive. For ordinary people, and even for the vast majority of ability users of the inner world, this term didn't have any actual meaning. However, for the colossus that was the Order of Justice, the Gate of Truth, which allowed them to see the true form of the supreme sacrificial relic, open supreme authority, and obtain supreme wisdom, was a utopia similar to heaven and the Pure Land. It was a supreme pursuit. The Order of Justice could use the name of the Gate of Truth at any time to start a holy war, regardless of the consequences. It wasn't just Zhang Yingying. Bamboo Pole, Octopus, Chinikuan, Gouda, and the other members of the branch, Shi Xian, and the other military and political students were all exchanging glances and information. Only Luo Nan still had a distant expression in his eyes. His expression was misty. Zhang Yingying couldn't hold back her anger when she saw this. Wake up. I'm really going to bicker with you about the Gate of Truth. Do you think that Li Taixing is the only one who came? The fakes of the Order of Justice, from the first oblatum to the members of the Order of Justice, are definitely itching to tear you apart and devour you. It's not like I know where the Gate of Truth is. Luo Nan casually replied, but Zhang Yingying retorted in the blink of an eye. Go say that to Li Taixing. Go say that to the first oblatum of the Order of Justice. Humph. Go say that to this group of people. The military and political students scattered all around immediately shifted their gazes one by one. They wanted to act as irrelevant people, but it wasn't that easy. Zhang Yingying really wanted to send this group of people flying with a kick. However, things were already halfway done. If she were to chase them away, it would be self-defeating. She exchanged glances with her fellow members of the branch. All she could do was clench her teeth and try to salvage the situation. Since you don't know about the Gate of Truth, you should have explained things clearly back then. Li Taixing is an egomaniac. Once he's determined, he can toss you into trouble even if there's nothing going on. He can toss you around with groundless accusations to turn the world upside down. Luo Nan approved of Li Taixing's character and conduct. That is indeed the case. However, his objective was already very clear before he spoke. I've said it before. On the plane of human emotions and thoughts, there are no objectives. There are no restraints. They flow endlessly and become turbid currents of the mind. The occasional flash of thought and the ever-changing emotions are all within them. They are meaningless in terms of individual fragments. Only when the turbid currents of the mind as a whole can they manifest certain trends and probabilities. Comparatively speaking, this is what is worthy of the Fortress's detection module and an individual's mental senses to study. Li Taixing isn't like this. His thoughts were extremely clear from the very beginning. He came with an answer to find proof. Then he probably believed that I provided the corresponding evidence, or perhaps I was the key factor that was sufficient for him to make his final decision. Zhang Yingying did her best to extract the key information from Luo Nan's lengthy speech. She grew more and more helpless. You've already dug up his ancestral grave. If he doesn't get rid of you, how can he dispel the hatred in his heart? That's right. It is indeed one of the sources of resentment that I feel. However, this person has a clear direction in advance. He already has a predetermined direction in his heart. His predetermined opinion will certainly cause interference from other factors. It isn't enough to prove some of my thoughts on the trends and probabilities of the turbid currents. Luo Nan walked forward as he spoke. The direction he was heading in was the place where the dense flow of people was. There was a transport staircase there. Thousands of tourists could be quickly transported to every corner of Cloud City Water Village through this high-altitude transport facility. One could reach the performance venue from there, but it was far inferior to the specially designed VIP passageway for the grand banquet. In addition, Luo Nan turned on an AR image projection at the same time. He projected a condensed projection of Cloud City Water Village's building passageways and pipelines. Luo Nan's fingertips flicked lightly on the image, and he found the shortest route within the complex passageways. That was definitely not the direction of the performance venue. Zhang Yingying was shocked. What are you doing? The performance is about to start. What the hell are you doing? I'm capturing the source of a bit of resentment. I feel that I need to do it. Luo Nan played it down. Boss Zhou's change in mood was extremely typical. From the chaotic and meaningless turbid flow of desire, he experienced hostility, fear, jealousy, and a series of other changes. Although his soul strength wasn't truly stripped away from the mental turbid flow until the very end, this tendency existed in the instant when the intensity of certain emotions was elevated. Perhaps he was just lacking a qualitative change, or perhaps he was lacking a highly efficient structure that led to this change. And then, for the sake of ensuring accuracy, I specifically recorded Boss Zhou's change in mood and designed an ideal model. I wanted to find a similar structure within the mental turbid flow that pervades this place. I wanted to calculate the distribution trend and the relevant probabilities. You surnamed Luo. Zhang Yingying finally exploded. She simply jumped up and reached out to grab Luo Nan's neck. We're here worrying about fatal danger for you. We're talking about the gate of truth. In the end, you're talking about some probability distribution. Who are you trying to insult? Luo Nan's body tilted. The beautiful girl's arm was strangled around his neck, and his face was pressed against hers. Whether it was the intangible emotions or the actual physical contact, he was unable to adapt for a time. He also understood that if he didn't bring the channel back on track, Miss Zhang Yingying would certainly give him a good beating. For the sake of wisdom, he began to do his best to enter reality mode. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. I'm really serious. You're serious about your theory? Are you going to kick down the mountain gates of the 3 great secret orders and fight head-on against 50 extraordinaries? How could that be? Luo Nan firmly denied it. He reluctantly returned to the problem of the gate of truth. I said it before. That Li Taixing was going to plant the gate of truth on me before we met. Maybe he already had this conjecture when that REE number 14 was shooting her mouth off. They were both clear goals and thoughts, but there was a clear difference in the structure and form between the new and the one that had been brewed. Really? Zhang Yingying looked at Luo Nan's confident appearance and was skeptical. Chapter 645. I've thought about it all day long, but it's not as good as what I've learned in a moment. This thought flashed through Luo Nan's mind, but he didn't say it out loud. After all, he couldn't say to everyone, I can do it because there are records and classic configurations in the Virtual Brain System's user manual. And there are many similar transformations in the materials his mother left behind. It was just like solving math problems. He had already memorized the formula, and he had used the same train of thought many times. Naturally, he would be more sensitive. Of course, without a comprehensive and meticulous grasp of the mental plane, all of this was like a flower in the mirror or the moon in the water. It was completely meaningless. The real situation was hard to say. Luo Nan could only say, Li Taixing's hostility is so obvious, and he himself is a powerful ability user. The corresponding traces are obviously very clear. Clear my ass. At this moment, everyone who was listening to him, whether they were branch members or military and political students, were fighting against the power of ridicule in their hearts. Luo Nan finally broke free from Zhang Yingying's neck-grabbing technique. He took 2 quick steps, pulling away once more. At the same time, he explained, this sort of perception doesn't have much meaning. A normal person who is well versed in the ways of the world can use the most ordinary of eyes to observe and ears to make relatively clear judgments. Octopus hissed in pain, "What about the gate of truth? How do you know the specific contents of his considerations?" Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. "He always needs to allow me to have a bit of a technological advantage. Information deconstruction is a relatively practical part of this method." "God, you're fucking practical. You're practically a monster, okay?" The vast majority of the people present were mental-type cultivators. No one could truly understand Luo Nan's so-called method. The group of people looked at each other in dismay. Some of the more sensitive ones even felt their brains go cold, as if a stream of air had penetrated through them. They discovered a spirit-sucking monster. Should they call the police? "I'm waiting online. It's quite urgent." Zhang Yingying curled her lips and rushed forward 2 steps. She relied on her current height and the advantage of her high heels to press her elbow on Luo Nan's shoulder without a trace of politeness. "Get to the point. Right now, we need to discuss how to deal with this fellow Li Taixing's resentment and hostility." "Why should I care about him?" Luo Nan wanted to spread his hands to express his helplessness, but he nearly pounded Zhang Yingying in the chest. For the sake of preventing Zhang Yingying's emotions from exploding, he could only speak a few more words to express his thoughts. Li Taixing alone. Even if he adds in the group of people under him right now, aren't they just courting death if they want to harm me? In any case, I know where he is. Right now, he is most likely discussing with that officiator Jing Xiao how to deal with me. Should I get rid of them tonight and get some peace and quiet? What? If that's the case, there's no need to turn back. Just take the E11 elevator up to the 177th floor. Turn left, then turn left again, and you will see that lounge. There are 4 Ablatum Knights outside and 2 First Ablatum Knights inside. Their guard is very loose. The other people in the project department do not need to intervene. Just us, the branch members, will do it. If we catch them off guard, the script will be ready in 30 seconds. The group was choked by Luo Nan's matter-of-fact attitude. At this moment, Octopus somewhat missed the pure and innocent youth they first met. Aside from being a bit paranoid, Octopus didn't understand anything. After staring blankly for 2 seconds, he laughed bitterly and said, "Nanster, we're worried about the order of justice behind Li Taixing." "Hey, hold on a moment. This logic is quite interesting." Bamboo Pole was touched. He had Octopus stop for a moment and said, "Boss Luo, please continue. There's not much to talk about." In the end, Luo Nan was not a public speaker. Persuading others was not his forte. He simply expressed his thoughts as simply as possible. It's true that Li Taixing is the secret-bound First Ablatum of the Order of Justice, but he is at best a component or a module of the Order of Justice's system. The confrontation of a module and the confrontation of a system are 2 completely different things. This is what I'm thinking. If Li Taixing comes alone, our group will more or less be able to send him away. And if the entire system of the Order of Justice crushes him, the branch won't just sit and watch. Don't we have President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu? What you say makes a lot of sense. I actually have nothing to say in response. No one expected that Luo Nan would speak words that were filled with a deep sense of reality. Though he seemed to lack the boldness of a man, it was true. Zhang Yingying blinked her eyes. "Hey, do you think that the branch will be happy to take on a troublesome person like you? This isn't a problem of whether or not it's troublesome. Haven't we cooperated with the government and the military to establish the Fortress Project in order to strengthen our control and authority in the Gully region? Recently in the Gully region, all sorts of temporary configurations and solidified configurations have been very active and sensitive. This is the change brought about by the conflict between systems. You guys know better than me what the situation is like on the plane of reality. Under these circumstances, individual factors are basically subordinate to the whole. Just like the trend of changes in the turbid mental flow. If we can speed up the progress of the project at this time, we can continue to increase the power and deterrence of the fortress, making the trend change more in line with our interests. A lot of troubles will be easily solved. At the very least, we can reduce some of the difficulty. This is a technical problem that I'm quite good at. Zhang Yingying opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, she was left speechless. It wasn't just her. Many of the project team members who followed Luo Nan through the stream of people had no choice but to look at this 16-year-old youth in a new light. Perhaps Luo Nan really was lacking in experience. Perhaps he had been a hopeless theory maniac his entire life. But it was precisely the theory that he was immersed in, the theory that he was good at, that gave him a unique perspective that was hard for others to reach. It also gave him a solid foothold in the world. Of course, whether it was branch members like Zhang Yingying or Bamboo Pole, or the military and political students, none of them would simply believe that the conflict with the order of justice was a simple technical problem. But the problem was that the order of justice really did have the ability and capital to forcefully turn a practical problem into a technical one. As for whether or not this possibility could be realized, how could they verify it if the matter wasn't right in front of them? At the very least, Teacher Luo's theory was quite convincing based on the series of events that had occurred in the past. Zhang Yingying, Bamboo Pole, and the others exchanged glances. They temporarily gave up on discussing the matter of the Gate of Truth with Luo Nan. Not to mention the fact that they were unable to break through Luo Nan's unique fortress of logic in a short amount of time. Even if they did break through it, would they be able to find a way to solve the problem? Looking at it this way, Luo Nan's thoughts were the clearest. Luo Nan didn't mind how other people viewed him. After discussing their positions and interests, his thoughts returned to the domain he was truly interested in. At this time, the grandiose group of people had already followed him to the other end of the floor. The further they went, the fewer tourists and pedestrians there were. It wasn't because the place was remote, but because of another reason. After walking another 100 steps, someone finally discovered a problem. Huh? Where are we? More than half of the people in the group had their wristbands vibrating as they spoke. The SCA's authority system was sending them a warning. They were entering a special authority zone. The so-called special authority zone was perhaps a temporary work area set up by some secret department. Perhaps it was a place where trade secrets were kept. Perhaps it was a high-end place operated by a special authority. In short, it meant that strangers were not allowed to approach. If one's authority in society did not reach a certain level, one's personal credit would be severely affected if one forcefully barged in. Moreover, there was an extremely high probability that one would be driven away by the corresponding security system. One would have to bear the personal damage caused by this. The problem was that Luo Nan's group was either a member of the Xia City branch or an outstanding technical talent of the government or the military. Their authority in society exceeded that of ordinary people by a large margin. It was quite rare to see a situation where more than half of the people in Luo Nan's group were refused visas. Yep, it should be mentioned that Luo Nan was one of the people who were refused visas. The reason the system gave him was this: underage. Octopus spat in disdain. It's definitely the work of those dregs. I remember that it's a high-end private clubhouse up ahead. It's the kind where you can let yourself go. Expert. Bamboo Pole gave him a cold stab. This could be considered revenge. Octopus didn't even have time to counterattack when he saw Luo Nan ignore the authority warning without batting an eyelid. He walked straight ahead. The area's alarm and the wristband sounded at the same time. 2 seconds later, the figures of multifunctional robots appeared in front of them. They quickly arranged themselves into rows, blocking the group's path. Dense footsteps could be heard from further away. It wouldn't be long before the clubhouse's security arrived. Hey! Zhang Yingying wanted to ask Luo Nan clearly what was going on, but the branch's duty room contacted her at this time. The system is warning us. Did a conflict occur? How is Mr. Luo? I suggest you guys adjust his authority. Zhang Yingying hastily replied and rushed to Luo Nan's side in a few steps. What in the world are you doing here? I told you. There are many people here at Cloud City Water Village who have grievances against me. They're similar to Boss So. It's worth researching. Luo Nan was very happy to share his thoughts with others. The mental turbid flow is a complex and chaotic object of observation. Pure detection of the details is meaningless. This is because by the time it becomes clear, the matter should have already happened. We need advanced judgment, even some sort of prophecy. This requires some sort of probabilistic analysis and trend analysis. For analysis, mathematical modeling requires a large amount of calculations and the aid of specialized equipment. This isn't easy for the blood intent ring, the fortress, and for me. Therefore, it's more appropriate to grasp the direct trend of the mental turbid flow. Didn't I discover something just now? I'm going to go verify it. Luo Nan had already arrived before the warning line formed by the multifunctional robots as he spoke. Though there were suspicions of breaking the law, the students from the government and the military were all rubbing their hands in glee. The privileges of the Fortress Project team were quite high. Plus, Luo Nan was the leader. Who wouldn't want to show off in this sort of situation where they could be easily exempted? But Luo Nan didn't give them the chance to show off. The external neuron, which came from a mysterious higher civilization, possessed the ability to control most intelligent devices. He just needed a thought and an entire row of multifunctional robots parted into two sides like a military parade, allowing Luo Nan's group to enter. The security personnel arrived at this time and were loudly berating them. Luo Nan didn't pay attention to them at all. He gave the students a chance to show off. Sure enough, in just 5 or 6 seconds, the security guards who rushed over were all subdued. Luo Nan's pace didn't change at all as he directly entered the core area of the club. He was like a regular customer under the guidance of unrivaled step of the present era's mental senses. He made a few turns in the maze-like corridors of the club and found the place. There was a Rococo-style double golden door in front of him. The 2 pillars and the main door had extremely complex decorative engravings. Every centimeter of the engravings emitted a dazzling luster. Chapter 646. The luxurious double doors gave people the feeling that there was a sealed space behind it. But in reality, when the doors opened, what appeared inside was a very typical European garden. Perhaps there was even a bit of ancient Roman style in it. There was a circular fountain with a diameter of over 20 meters in the middle of the courtyard. The water vapor was dense. Rays of light that mimicked daylight sprinkled down. The weather system should have set it to summer, which was the complete opposite of the season. The temperature here was at least 25 degrees and the humidity was very high. The scattered people were extremely conscious of acting. Each and every one of them wore loose and light robes. Some of them were playing by the side of the fountain or in the pool. They wet their clothes, exposing their bodies as a matter of course. Some of them even smeared essential oil on their bodies, making them look glossy and shiny. Not to mention the men present, all of the women present had beautiful figures that were not inferior to supermodels. Their skin was as white as fat, as yellow jade, and as black as pearls. It was a very pleasing sight to the eyes when they complimented each other in the garden. Luo Nan was the destroyer of this scene. He forcefully entered the door and pressed the pause button on the garden scene. But he didn't stop from the beginning to the end. After entering the door, he bypassed the fountain and went inside the garden. He casually spoke to a beautiful woman who stood like a statue by the side of the fountain. "Excuse me. Are you King crazy? What's going on? Where's the security?" "Security." Luo Nan walked forward with large strides amidst the roars and screams of the men and women in the garden. 2 strong men dressed in Roman warrior attire rushed over while shouting. They were probably the security guards at the scene. But in the blink of an eye, the world spun around them. The 2 of them turned into drunkards at the same time. They were like 2 enraged bulls. They collided with each other, their foreheads touching. They didn't have any cushioning measures. They simply fell to the ground, unconscious. The screams of the women at the scene became louder and louder. Zhang Yingying hurried to catch up to Luo Nan's footsteps with great difficulty. She whistled when she saw the scenery and state of the garden. "Did you follow your hormones here?" Before Luo Nan could answer, a person came running over from the side. This person was over middle-aged. He wore loose clothing, but there was a staff card of the club on it. He should be the person in charge of the venue. He was broad and fat. He was panting from running. His soft address showed his attitude. Sir, sir, sir. The person in charge wanted to stop Luo Nan, but he didn't dare to. He just jogged to keep up with Luo Nan's pace, trying to figure out what was going on. Sir, this is a private club with special privileges. If the issue of the delimitation of privileges has brought you any inconvenience. I'm just passing by. Luo Nan didn't even glance at her from the corner of his eyes. He just walked straight ahead. That was not what he said just now. Zhang Yingying cursed silently, but she wouldn't drag Luo Nan down and expose his secrets. But he soon heard Luo Nan say, the high-altitude stage performance is about to begin. It's quite far to take a detour. It's faster to get to the venue from here. If you go through the VIP passage, you can even go backstage, right? The person in charge was a little confused and didn't know how to reply. With their club's background, even the mayor's son would have to be detained first if they were to barge in so simply and brutally. But the problem was that the young man in front of him had come in a group. The bodyguards inside and outside were all tightly blocked by his group of friends or underlings. The multifunctional robots that could be used as security had inexplicably gone out of control, directly turning the club into a defenseless place. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Not to mention the safety of the VIPs present. He had to admit defeat even if he didn't want to. From another perspective, Luo Nan was certainly not an ordinary person. But the club's VIP information didn't have Luo Nan's existence at all. He had the appearance of an old horse that knew the way. He was simply more frequent than a frequent customer. And his age. The person in charge slowed down in his stupor. He wanted to chase after Luo Nan, but he was drowned out by the military and political students following behind him. Not long after passing through the fountain pool area, he entered the colonnade area. Luo Nan passed through the white pillars, brushing shoulders with man and woman one after the other, but he never stopped. One look and one could tell that he had made up his mind. Suddenly, he changed directions and took 2 quick steps. While everyone was still in a daze, he grabbed a figure behind a white pillar and forcefully dragged him out. You! What are you doing? The newcomer was quite frightened. He struggled with all his might. Actually, this person's physique was a size larger than Luo Nan's, who had yet to fully develop. However, Luo Nan, who had already formally awakened, had a degree of toughness in the structure of his body and soul that far exceeded the scope of a normal person. Luo Nan only needed to exert a bit of force to make this person lose the strength to resist. He staggered and fell out from behind the pillar, being watched by a group of people. Zhang Yingying's eyes lit up. Oh. Suspicious. It was very clear that this person was dressed in modern casual attire amidst the large expanse of loose and revealing clothing. It was just that he had taken off his shirt. He was completely out of tune with the surrounding environment. It was likely that he had just arrived here and hadn't had the time to change his clothes before Luo Nan caught him red-handed. The person in charge of the venue caught up to Luo Nan the moment he stopped walking. Zhang Yingying turned her head to stare at him. Look at your attire. You're a thief, right? How are you going to thank us? The person in charge's face was covered in sweat. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Mr. Chow is a VIP of the club. He was here before. He just went out for a bit. This reminded Zhang Yingying. She turned her head to size up the thief and asked him, were you at the A2 elevator entrance just now? The reason why she asked this was because of Luo Nan's series of reactions. One of the starting points was the shift of attention at the elevator entrance. The Mr. Chow that was pulled out was actually quite young. He looked to be in his 20s. His initial intense struggle was futile. He had a very dispirited expression on his face. His reaction was quite different from that of a normal person. When he heard Zhang Yingying talk about the A2 elevator entrance, the last bit of blood drained from his face. It was as if his entire person had experienced a nightmare. Actually, what he experienced in the past few minutes was more or less a nightmare. This person is from the Mystical Research Society. As Luo Nan's bodyguard, Chinikuan had put some effort into Luo Nan's social circle. Of course, Gouda had done the same. The two bodyguards compared each other and figured out the identity of this person. Chao Shanhai, a high-level cadre of Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. He had a good relationship with the vice president, au Quebec. He was famous for his big mouth. Yes, he was also known as the Gossip Lord. A few days ago, this bro didn't watch his mouth. He nearly insulted Luo Nan's mother. Fei Jin splashed hot coffee on his face and Luo Nan glared at him coldly. He was beaten to the ground and cut an extremely sorry figure. Speaking of which, Chao Shanhai certainly had a grudge against Luo Nan. But when he faced Luo Nan tonight, his grudge could not replace his courage. Earlier at the A2 elevator entrance, he instinctively hid when he saw Luo Nan come over. He didn't know what went wrong and hid in the club. Luo Nan caught him like a turtle in a jar and pulled him out. Right now, Chao Shanhai's mental state was about to collapse. His nervous mood was overflowing with words. Anyone could see that this fellow was feeling guilty. He was certainly hiding something in his heart. With this kind of courage, he would probably collapse with just a little poke. Luo Nan didn't have any intentions of communicating with him. Or perhaps it could be said that seeing Chao Shanhai's performance was enough for him. He loosened his grip on Chao Shanhai and said, "Follow me." He didn't say why he was following him. Chao Shanhai didn't have the possibility to refuse. There were a dozen government and military personnel behind him. Even if they were just technical personnel, controlling an ordinary person would be extremely easy. Luo Nan walked back to his original path and continued forward. Chao Shanhai was bound by the flow of people as he moved forward. Struggling was meaningless. He had companions here. Unfortunately, this group of companions came from the Divine Research Society. They overlapped with the group of people from the hot drinks shop a few days ago. Many people lost the courage to interfere when they saw Luo Nan. Even those who didn't know what was going on acted like quails and shrank back into the crowd when they saw more and more subordinates gathering behind Luo Nan. Chao Shanhai walked like this for 20 to 30 steps before he collapsed. He sat on the ground with all his might. "It's none of my business. It's none of my business. I just listened to them talk. I didn't participate. What the hell?" There really was an inside story here. Zhang Yingying, Bamboo Pole, and the others were shocked. Was there some conspiracy against Luo Nan that was hidden from the branch's intelligence network? Boss. Boss. Boss Luo, what in the world is going on? Zhang Yingying's curiosity really exploded. She quickly caught up to Luo Nan's pace, wanting to get to the bottom of things. Luo Nan didn't hide anything. He replied, "This person's nature is the same as Boss So's. The evil intent against me in the mental turbid flow is clear, but it hasn't been able to form an effective structure. Tracing back from its flow, there is a similar unformed structure surrounding him. I want to verify it. He has accomplices." Zhang Yingying could only understand this much. They passed through the colonnade of the atrium as they spoke, entering the garden at the back of the courtyard. This place was a bit more secluded than the front. It was impossible to tell the real from the fake flowers and trees. They formed a carpet of grass green, purple and red interwoven. The walls of flowers formed a rather ingenious partition. Right now, there were pairs of men and women, or more complicated combinations of men and women. They tumbled on the grass and among the flowers and trees. The light, color, and aura perfectly rendered the atmosphere of an open banquet. Octopus swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The banquet hasn't officially started yet. There are quite a few impatient people. "Nanster, you didn't come here to catch us in the act." Ouch! Zhang Yingying kicked Octopus in the waist, who didn't keep his mouth shut. As for Luo Nan, he didn't pay attention to Octopus at all. He raised his wrist once more to look at the time. There's still 20 minutes. He was talking about the performance time of the Mountain Creek Band, which Moya was a part of. Zhang Yingying knew this better than he did. If it doesn't take too long, and if it really is as you said, there's a VIP passageway that leads to the backstage, we can still save him. Looking at the flow of mental turbid flow, it doesn't matter whether we save him or not once the tendency of people's hearts has taken shape. Huh? Zhang Yingying was dumbfounded by the completely unrelated response. At this time, a dozen meters ahead, behind the flower and tree partition that was half the height of a person, a human figure suddenly flipped over. It was a man and a woman, and they seemed to be pulling at each other. The woman had a head of long hair that was like a waterfall. It covered most of her shoulders and neck, but a small portion of her body that was brimming with the luster of youth was still exposed. It was easy to imagine what kind of state she was in just now. She didn't pay attention to Luo Nan's party, who was approaching. She hastily put on her clothes and waved away the unforgiving hand of the man beside her. She staggered a bit, but she still firmly pulled away from the object of intimate contact. I'm in a hurry. If you have the time, there's a whole bunch of people here. Let go. And at this time, the woman finally noticed Luo Nan, who was only a few steps away. She was stunned for a moment, then she suddenly lowered her head, letting her hair cover her face. At the same time, she suddenly exerted force and practically kicked away the man beside her. She walked away barefoot. Unfortunately, due to the design of the passageway, it was impossible for her to bypass Luo Nan's party no matter what. She could only maintain the posture of keeping her head down and her hair hanging down. She walked with quick steps, nearly tripping over some grass in the middle. Luo Nan didn't move. Octopus, who was beside him, helped her up in a gentlemanly manner, but the woman threw him off by reflex. Her footsteps became faster, and she soon went far away. Octopus didn't mind. He took a deep breath and revealed an expression of enjoyment. Bamboo Pole clicked his tongue twice. Really not bad. What a pity. Chapter 647. What the hell is going on? Everything was fine during the rehearsal. Mo Peng was just an ordinary audience member. At most, he had the status of a relative of a performer. It would be too difficult for him to know the inside story. Luo Nan listened quietly, not saying a word. Only when the woman who left in a hurry walked far away did he let out a grunt, I know. Maybe they just switched seats. It's very common during performances. Didn't Amoya say anything to you? She turned off her phone a long time ago. I called Brother Hai Jing, but she didn't say anything clearly. She quickly hung up. Hey, it can't be that the program got cut. Don't let your imagination run wild. There's no problem. I'll be there in a moment. Save a good spot for me. Luo Nan hung up. Up until this time, the man who had been kicked away hadn't completely gotten up. It wasn't that he had been kicked hard, but that he finally saw the dense group of people. Luo Nan, who was at the head of the group, was a bit sluggish and confused. This man's age was about the same as Chao Shenhai's. He might even be a bit younger. His face still had traces of alcohol or other anesthetic substances. After being stunned for a few seconds, he instinctively put on his clothes. It was a kind of light, antique robe. It was quite convenient to hide his ugliness. Luo Nan didn't say anything. He walked straight forward, bypassing the flower and tree partition in front of him. He entered a messy grassy battlefield. The man subconsciously thought that Luo Nan was going to bicker with him. He quickly retreated a step. His feet were very flat, but his left and right feet knocked against each other. He nearly tripped over himself and broke out in a cold sweat. This allowed him to temporarily pull himself out from the effects of the alcohol and hallucinogens. The problem was that Luo Nan didn't pay attention to him at all. He just lowered his head to size up this area. The matter had ended in a hurry. There were many traces here, including abandoned clothes, shoes, and the like. Wasn't the woman barefoot when she left? Luo Nan's actions greatly defied common sense. But the more it was like this, the harder it was for the man beside Luo Nan to feel his pulse. Before he could recover from the shock of seeing Luo Nan, he was once again thrown into confusion. This was different from the scene he had set up earlier. The man couldn't stand this. It was like a spider that had just finished weaving its web with great difficulty. Just as it saw its prey stick to the web, a huge hole appeared. Coincidence? It must be a coincidence. The man didn't believe that his meticulous and complicated arrangements had been met with the main character right after he had just started. It didn't make sense at all. Moreover, this attitude of ignoring him as if he was looking at a stranger, what the hell was this? The man stared at the back of Luo Nan's head for a full 10 seconds. In the end, he couldn't hold it in anymore. This also meant that the excited state of his emotions and nerves had suppressed his rather unclear reasoning. He skipped over some very important and unfinished segments of the process. He began to play out the performance that he had replayed in his mind countless times. The man shifted a few steps to the side to ensure that he was within Luo Nan's line of sight. Then he deliberately adjusted his tone and acted surprised. Hey, isn't this Junior Nan? 10 seconds was enough for Luo Nan to look over the entire scene. It was also enough for him to discover even more details. Compared to the chaos on the surface, he paid more attention to the order and regularity hidden deep within the details. It was also at this moment that the noisy voice continued to enter his ears. I didn't expect to meet you in a place like this. I've seen your information. Everyone says that you're a taciturn and well-behaved child. So it turns out that you're a kindred spirit. That's right, the idiom, one is marked by the company one keeps should have been taught by the teacher. The man laughed heartily to himself. He casually tidied up his clothes and took the initiative to move forward. He made sure that Luo Nan could hear him clearly. You don't say. Your sister's band really has some good stuff. This electro girl really seems to be electrified. It's quite interesting. Let's have a chat. Men who chattered endlessly were the most annoying. Moreover, the words that carried malice and nausea also rushed into quite a few of Luo Nan's thoughts. Luo Nan frowned. He turned his head to look at this seemingly familiar face. What's your name again? The man's face turned sluggish for an instant. It was already 2 seconds later when he truly understood Luo Nan's expression. He had once tried to control himself, to put on an even calmer face. But when his gaze connected with Luo Nan's, he truly felt Luo Nan's undisguised attitude. The emotions that had been bubbling within him all this time exploded. What the hell are you pretending to be confused for? The man squeezed out a sharp change in pitch from his throat. He subconsciously extended his hand, wanting to use a more direct method to strengthen Luo Nan's impression and memories. But the biggest problem was that the person he encountered wasn't just Luo Nan. There was also a group of military and political students who were eager to perform. In the blink of an eye, several people displayed their skills. They jumped over the flower and tree partitions, pulled him by the arm, strangled his throat, and dragged him back. Then they pressed him to the ground. After experiencing the rubbing of alcohol and drugs, the man's little bit of rationality couldn't have predicted the scene before his eyes. Yet it happened in reality. Reality and imagination collided. The former mercilessly gave the latter a round of critical strikes, dealing out tons of damage. The beautiful bubble burst. This was something the man was unable to accept. Especially after his knees hit the ground, the strings of his rationality completely collapsed. He roared loudly, wanting Luo Nan to remember. Luo Nan, you bastard. Look clearly. I'm Huang Bingjin. The Huang Bingjin who was sent to the hospital by you. Huang Bingjin? Luo Nan really did remember. Yes, there was such a person. During the Frost River reality incident, the Order of Justice had imitated a certain key node in the human-faced arachnid experiment. Of course, this wasn't the main point right now. Luo Nan stood on the lawn and closed his eyes, shielding himself from external disturbances. He pondered for a moment, turned his head, and waved at Octopus. Octopus was looking at Huang Bingjin, but Zhang Yingying pushed him. Only then did Octopus come back to his senses. He pointed at his own nose. "You're calling me?" Octopus walked to the lawn after receiving an affirmative answer. He looked at the scattered clothes and traces and clicked his tongue. "Bro Octopus, the smell here is quite familiar." He, what kind of person do you take me for?" Octopus instinctively wanted to protect his glorious image, but when he saw Luo Nan's serious gaze, he quivered and came to a realization. His nostrils flared slightly as he did his best to absorb the surrounding drifting smell molecules. His many years of professional experience allowed him to quickly make a judgment. It should be leaf, but it's been processed a bit. The THC composition has been extracted in a more professional manner, and a few other compositions have been mixed in as well. It's an extremely beautiful hallucinogen. But for this kind of scene, it's already a relatively restrained type. Luo Nan could be considered half a professional in the field of neurological drugs. He had the concept, but his knowledge was relatively limited. He asked, "What are the other compositions?" Most of Octopus's abilities lay in the compounding and purification of drug compositions. His acuity in this particular field even surpassed some precision instruments. He pondered for a moment and replied, "If we don't count the ordinary impurities, then it seems that this toy was made from local materials, branches, and leaves of some nearby plants." Oh. Amazing. At this time, Zhang Yingying, Bamboo Pole, and the others came over to take a look. Zhang Yingying wrinkled her nose. Her gaze swept over the traces left behind on the scene, and she grasped the key point in an instant. "There's an extra robe. There's still someone here." Bamboo Pole agreed. "They're having fun." At this time, Octopus grasped the crux of Luo Nan's expertise. He turned his head to look all around, looking at the types of plants in the surroundings: laurel, lavender, peppermint. There's nothing special about them, but they do have the value of purification. The key point is that there are no traces of the operation of any instruments. It's purely handmade, yet it can achieve an effect similar to deep processing. A normal person definitely can't do this. Okay, I can't do it either. Luo Nan nodded slightly. He's an ability user. Bamboo Pole concluded, and he's a fellow who's proficient in pharmacology, biological neurology, and has an extremely strong ability to survive in the wild. Luo Nan expressed his approval. His gaze swept past Huang Bingjin, but he didn't stop. He was already considering how to use his mental senses to lock onto a target. Zhang Yingying was very baffled. Are we going to capture this person? Is he a dangerous person? Determining the direction of the mental turbid flow is like putting together a puzzle. We need to fill in the crucial pieces and see which fork it leads to. It's full of malice. I don't really believe that it's just this Huang something. Though Luo Nan said this, he couldn't avoid being disturbed by mundane matters. He recalled something. "Brother Octopus, help me out. Sister Shui, she's that woman just now. She has a relatively long medical history and her mental state isn't good. You should follow her. She's the drummer of the band. You can't replace her." Octopus frowned. "She's going on stage in a bit. If it's possible, give her a bit of control medication. Don't let anything happen to her. At least not until she gets off stage." Heh. Actually, there's not much point. Luo Nan was already able to see a certain possibility from the turbid flow of the mental plane. It was just as Murphy's Law, which had been stated so many times. If there was a possibility that something would go wrong, no matter how small the possibility was, it would always happen. At this time, Chao Shanhai, the 8-trigram lord of the Divine Research Society, was pushed to the front by the military and political students. This person was clearly much more unbearable than Huang Bingjin. He only cared about clearing his name. "It has nothing to do with me." I said it has nothing to do with me. I just heard them say that they want to use that female drummer to try and drag your sister down with them. That's all I know. F***ck your grandmother. Big mouth Chow. Huang Bingjin finally knew which segment had gone awry. But he could only flaunt his eloquence. He couldn't do anything else. Luo Nan looked over at Chao Shanhai. Zhang Yingying knew what he was thinking. She took the initiative to ask, "Hey, you said them. Are you saying that there's another person besides this scum?" Chapter 648. Big Mouth Chow, you coward. Huang Bingjin cursed loudly and clearly. He was practically treating himself as a martyr, but his roots didn't change. He turned his face to Luo Nan and spat wildly, going straight for the bottom 3 routes. So what if I want to fuck a woman? Since this circle is on the stage, it's for sale. You're burning with anxiety here, but your cousin might be even more anxious. She might not be able to hold back her coquettish. Ugh. A student to the side rewarded him with a fist, accurately hitting his stomach. Huang Bingjin's face immediately turned purple, and he spat out acid. His entire body curled up. Luo Nan ignored him for now. He looked around after sending off Octopus. He gradually sorted out the clues from the details that were hard for ordinary people to discover or even touch upon. Most of the people in the garden weren't attracted by the situation over here due to the partitioned layout and the effects of various drugs. They just laughed and screamed, minding their own business. And it was because of this that the atmosphere became even more absurd. After looking around, his gaze finally fell back onto Huang Bingjin's body. He gave a slight nod, but soon shook his head. The current environment is fine. Personal emotions are fine. This bit of evil intent isn't enough to stimulate an effective structure. It can't reach the intensity of the peak radiation. Oh, I understand a bit. Bamboo Pole snapped his fingers. He was the one whose attainments in the mental side were second only to Luo Nan. His knowledge was extensive, and his train of thought was open. He had been constantly trying to understand Luo Nan's special language system. Now he was suddenly enlightened. Boss Luo, what you're saying is that you were able to sense a certain portion of the turbid mental flow surging abnormally, forming a peak. Whether it's intensity or orderliness, in any case, it broke through a certain threshold and approached the standard of configuration. All of this can be applied to Huang Bingjin, but there are some errors in the field investigation. Yes, there are errors, and the errors aren't small. There's already a qualitative difference. Luo Nan let out a breath and revealed a smile. He wasn't deliberately mystifying things, trapping everyone in a 5-mile fog. It was just that his ability to express himself was lacking. His strength was lacking. He was very gratified that there was someone who could understand the translation. Zhang Yingying understood now, then there was an external cause inducement. Now the external cause is gone. Let's say inducement for now. Luo Nan's gaze roamed over Huang Bingjin's body. He carefully pondered and sorted out a series of details. At this moment, his bracelet vibrated. A second later, Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole also received communication requests. After a brief communication, they knew that the mess they had made in the club had made many people unable to sit still. The reactions of all parties finally came into play. Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole each answered and communicated with each other. Luo Nan looked at the caller ID, but he ignored it for the time being. He just walked 2 steps toward Huang Bingjin, getting a bit closer. He asked very seriously, "That kindred spirit of yours. Where is he right now?" He. Human emotions were a strange thing. Huang Bingjin, who had always been a foppish playboy and had nothing to do with bravery, gained unprecedented scorching power in the face of a situation where he was likely to be surrounded and beaten up by dozens of people. He tried to curl up the corners of his mouth, trying to face everything with the so-called mocking smile. But in the next moment, his cheeks and chin were forcefully pinched to death by Luo Nan. His skin, bones, and teeth were ground. It was sore and painful. The taste was terrible to the extreme. Oh la, Luo Nan. At this time, Huang Bingjin had a bit of awareness that a soldier would rather die than be humiliated. He struggled furiously, erupting with power in an instant. He nearly broke free from the clamps of the 2 military and political students. Huh. Bamboo Pole's heart stirred slightly when he saw this scene. He took the initiative to end the call and walked over. Zhang Yingying walked a bit further. Luo Nan and Bamboo Pole had already started talking when she discovered the changes. Do you feel anything? Something on the mental plane? Sorry, I don't feel anything at all. I just see that the explosive power is a bit excessive. You can examine the fleshly plane. This is an important point. No matter how much Huang Bingjin struggled, he was unable to move his power to his face. Luo Nan continued to firmly grasp Huang Bingjin's cheeks as he carefully observed. It's changing. This person's emotions are heading toward extremes. But his extremes are meaningful and orderly. This is interesting. Bamboo Pole was also observing and making a judgment. Is this a concentration caused by extremes? At this time, Huang Bingjin's face turned purple under the creation of extreme emotions. His eyeballs were about to pop out. In particular, his eyeballs were severely congested with blood. They were densely packed with veins of blood. The corners of his eyes and temples were throbbing. Hatred and resentment overflowed from his words. Luo Nan's eyelids didn't even blink. It was like he was observing a little white mouse in a laboratory box. And he really was making records. The external neuron interface was quite convenient to work online. He had mental senses that were becoming more and more precise and penetrating. He also asked the Wraith sign to help him across space. He was able to make a relatively accurate judgment of the activity of Huang Bingjin's brain region and the composition of the neurotransmitters that were secreted and circulating within his neural network. After making the original records, Luo Nan would go back and input the relevant data. Perhaps he would be able to obtain a deeper conclusion through the model his mother had designed. Of course, the most valuable thing right now was the faintly discernible embryonic structure on the mental plane. It embodied the changing laws of turbid flow that he had been researching and pondering all this time. If he traced it back, he would be able to strip away many originally vague truths. Luo Nan came to a preliminary conclusion. Concentration is a conscious action, but this person doesn't possess it. His control ability on the mental plane is a complete mess. My opinion is that the reason why his soul strength tends toward structure and order is because someone has already planned out the channels and vessels for the drainage beforehand. It belongs to the construction of the material plane. Bamboo Pole blinked his eyes. Oh, this is a delicate job. That's right. And it's a bit familiar. Luo Nan loosened his hand, giving Huang Bingjin's mouth freedom. Huang Bingjin's face contorted. He wanted to let loose a torrent of curses, but the military student restraining him had already used his technique. The force penetrated into the medulla oblongata, causing Huang Bingjin's breathing and heartbeat to go out of control. Huang Bingjin couldn't say anything. Zhang Yingying ended the call and came over. She just so happened to hear the tail end of the conversation. She immediately asked, if he keeps on going to extremes, will there be a qualitative change? It's hard to make an accurate judgment without sufficient structural analysis. But I feel that it's still a bit lacking. In the domain of configuration, especially on the mental plane, the design threshold is taboo. It's not too high or too low. After all, the target of guidance is seriously unstable. Some people are in a good state, and they might be able to leap up. But there are also people whose blood vessels might explode. They are just a hair's breadth away. If this sort of situation occurs, it would undoubtedly be a failure of design. So, in actual operation, it's better to design a few more levels. It's like a ship lock. It's better to go up section by section. Oh. Luo Nan's relaying of these design concepts caused the surrounding students to perk up their ears. But as he spoke, a flash of inspiration occurred. Chapter 649. Luo Nan released his mental senses, and everyone around him sensed it. Hey, you're too arrogant. Zhang Yingying shivered. She instinctively wanted to activate her white rainbow sword energy to resist the penetrative effects of soul strength. She managed to control herself with great difficulty. She rolled her eyes at Luo Nan. Master, we all know that you can play around in the abyss region at any time. Don't fight with us ordinary people for territory, okay? Bamboo Pole was able to sense it. This is Cat Eye's type of senses. It's an interference wave that approaches the material plane. Its range is limited. It needs precision, Luo Nan explained simply. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. You have a clue? He's nearby. That pharmacist? It was normal for her to have such thoughts. The closer one's soul strength was to the material plane, the greater the interference loss. Soul strength was affected by the layout of buildings and objects on the material plane, causing it to decay extremely quickly. The range of one's senses was also limited. However, the details of the material plane could be grasped more accurately. For example, Cat Eyes. She was the most proficient ability user in this field of senses in Xia City. Even though she had made rapid progress recently, her mental senses had a radius of around 100 meters. As for Luo Nan, his effective killing radius was an astonishing 300 meters when he exterminated the rat tied in King Ku's communications building. It exceeded Cat Eyes by over 3 times. However, Zhang Yingying had heard Her Majesty Empress Wu mention that the difference between Luo Nan and Cat Eyes was of an order of magnitude. Then, 10 times? 20 times? Or 100 times beyond the horizon? Pharmacist? No, I haven't seen one yet. Besides, I'm more interested in the structure. Luo Nan denied Zhang Yingying's conjecture. He flipped open his notebook and used the flexible e-ink screen to establish a projection workspace. He reproduced a 3-dimensional perspective map of Cloud City Water Village. Countless regular, irregular lines, translucent planes, and curved surfaces came together to form this cluster of skyscrapers. The original large scale of 1,5,000 was not enough to completely display the entirety of Cloud City Water Village in the projection workspace. Luo Nan could only zoom in. As the scope of the projection grew larger and larger, Zhang Yingying's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. You're not going to search all of these buildings, are you? Yes, if necessary. Luo Nan responded without thinking. At the same time, he circled and drew on the perspective map. He marked out a few suspicious areas that he had observed in real time. It extended from the clubhouse they were currently in to Aurora Cloud City and the other buildings in Cloud City Water Village. Soon, the marked distance had already exceeded 300 meters, and it was more than 3 kilometers. From Luo Nan's perspective, the range of his senses on the material plane was limited, but that was only relative. At his current stage, his soul strength had gone through round after round of accumulation and explosive growth. Compared to Cat Eyes, there was indeed an order of magnitude difference, and it wasn't just a matter of 1 or 2. Even without taking into account the effects of the soul cloak, it could easily cover a distance of 100 kilometers. It wouldn't be a problem for it to cover the entire Pingjiang district. It could also cover most of Xia City. It just wouldn't be used for a while. Needless to say, he had recently been trying to improve the structure of his mental senses to deal with the problem of the cloud maze, and now the results were beginning to show. In terms of accuracy, he had absolute confidence. However, the analysis and discovery of a configuration wasn't just about precision. The key was still the train of thought. Luo Nan tried to find the hidden train of thought and logic. He did it with complete concentration. Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole, as well as the other military and political students, were also paying close attention. They wanted to see what kind of result this psychic master would come up with. 2 minutes later, Luo Nan stopped when the 3D perspective diagram was drawn beyond recognition. He grunted, "It's inflated." "What's inflated?" "I'm inflated. I haven't even truly crossed the threshold yet, and I'm already vainly trying to pluck a specific configuration from a complex background. It's simply impossible." Holy crap. Zhang Yingying didn't expect Luo Lan to pant. She subconsciously wanted to kick him, but she heard sighs from the lawn and the flowers and trees nearby. She didn't want to damage this fellow's dignity as a teacher, so she could only forcefully restrain this impulse. She spoke in a bad mood. "What should we do next?" Luo Nan was calm. "Let's continue investigating. There's definitely a problem with this Huang something. Bamboo Pole muttered to himself for a moment before giving a suggestion. If we want to investigate deeper, it's best to have a conclusion first. After all, the significance of the configuration on the mental plane is enough to convince us. Secular society needs a process of acceptance. The military is fine, but the government needs a plausible reason. Many of the military and political students were nodding. It was rare for Luo Nan to follow good advice. It's not impossible to find the exact significance. Normal people can accept it. Luo Nan's wristband vibrated once more before he could finish speaking. Another call came in. This time, the other party had a higher level of authority. They came directly from the Hexier. Mr. Luo. Oh, Sister Yuayin. The caller was He Yuayin. She went straight to the point. Are there any changes over at Cloud City Water Village? Do you need backup? Yes. A bit of an accident has occurred. I recommend sending more strength because... Luo Nan swept a glance at Huang Bingjin. He ignored Huang Bingjin's fierce and resentful gaze and calmly stated, a primary infected person has appeared here. What? Zhang Yingying's startled cry suppressed He Yuayin's reply. A primary infected person? Another secondary infected person? Bamboo Pole sucked in a breath of air. The circle is still expanding? The words he spat out spread through the air, stimulating the relevant brain regions of the nearby listeners. They formed meaningful information and formed a new wave of stimulation. Not to mention the members of the project team, even Chao Shanhai, who was forcefully dragged over, and the manager of the clubhouse, who was unwilling in every way but had to bite the bullet and come over due to his duty, were bombarded into a state of dizziness by these words. People who lived in the era of distortion had an instinctive sense of fear and rejection toward the word distortion. And if the word infection was added to the back of the word, then this feeling would instantly increase by several orders of magnitude. The manager of the clubhouse shrank back in the first instance. If Chao Shanhai had a bit of freedom, his actions would probably be much more intense than the manager. Bamboo Pole quickly accepted this explanation after a short period of astonishment. He came to a sudden realization, no wonder. A weak chicken lying like a corpse in the hospital is full of life and vigor here. His physical strength is quite extraordinary. I'm afraid this isn't an ordinary secondary symptom. Yes, this is a reason that can't be refused. From an ecological point of view, the mutation infection could be divided into 3 stages: foreign invasion, primary infection, and new form mutation. The secondary infected person had already been discovered during the November incident at the municipal plaza. The branch and the relevant authorities carried out control. But any smart person would know that rather than control, it would be more accurate to say that it was phishing. Should the phishing be said to have succeeded? Zhang Yingying stared tightly at Huang Bingjin. Is he really a secondary infected person? Luo Nan didn't give confirmation in the first instance. He didn't even reply to He Yuayin. Instead, he made his move once more, pressing down on Huang Bingjin's face. A cold and penetrating gaze pierced straight into the depths of Huang Bingjin's eyes. Luo Nan. Huang Bingjin had been a silk pants for dozens of years, but this was the first time he had fallen into this sort of situation where he could be needed by others. This was undoubtedly an extraordinary shame and humiliation. He roared as he pushed against Luo Nan's hand. His hands were under Luo Nan's control, so he used his teeth to bite down. But all he could do was add a bit of saliva to Luo Nan's palm. Luo Nan didn't care about this sort of situation. His palm was like a red-hot soldering iron stuck to his flesh. Or perhaps it was a sealing bite. It gave Huang Bingjin an intense feeling of humiliation and pain. And on a level that Huang Bingjin wasn't aware of, Luo Nan's mental clairvoyance was like a sharp scalpel. It tore open Huang Bingjin's malevolent and irritable face. It touched upon the hidden emotions at the bottom of Huang Bingjin's heart that he himself didn't understand. Several seconds later, Luo Nan opened his mouth to ask, "Hey, a mutant infection isn't a good thing, right?" Zhang Yingying gave him a supercilious look. Nonsense. Then what kind of element is it that makes this Huang something completely unconcerned about this sort of thing? So much so that he's subconsciously displaying an abnormal excitement? Does he have some sort of misunderstanding about a mutant infection? In the blink of an eye, the furious and struggling Huang Bingjin became the target of everyone's gazes. And Huang Bingjin, who was deep in extreme emotions, still hadn't reacted. He was still trying to bite Luo Nan's palm. He was like a rabid dog, not a normal person. Just a little bit more. I suddenly had an idea. Zhang Yingying and the others chuckled. Ominous dark clouds gathered in their minds. Luo Nan gazed at Huang Bingjin, peeling away the structure of his body and soul layer by layer. At the same time, he perfected his own idea. I'm thinking that the terrain of Cloud City Water Village is far too complex. Extracting a specific configuration by itself is beyond the scope of my abilities. But what would happen if I knew the answer in advance and went to work backwards? What answer? This will depend on the train of thought and tacit understanding. Luo Nan's clairvoyance towards the structure of Huang Bingjin's body and soul changed from a penetrative scalpel to a nimble and exquisite paintbrush. In his eyes, the current Huang Bingjin was ugly. This so-called ugliness had nothing to do with appearance, mood, character, or attitude. It was because of the combination of all of these. It was disorderly and chaotic. Luo Nan was like a child's graffiti, carrying out alterations and embellishments. He couldn't continue following the child's terrible train of thought. Instead, he had to break new ground. He had to borrow the existing lines and colors of the graffiti to extract a truly meaningful structure. And so, he poured a bucket of oil into Huang Bingjin's heart. Do you hate me? Keep going. Ugh, hi. It was as if a demon was roaring from the depths of Huang Bingjin's brain. The sharp sound wave charged over, pushing his emotions. His emotions swayed back and forth between fear and fury, pushing them all the way up. In the end, Huang Bingjin was at a height he couldn't even imagine, carving an incomprehensible imprint. When the imprint was carved, the real force of action took form. Huang Bingjin's face contorted violently. Dense tendons floated up from the smooth skin of his face. At first, they started from the thinnest areas of his skin, the corners of his eyes, the alar of his nose, and so on. Soon, they rapidly developed to the side of his cheeks and below his ears. They were like countless slender centipedes. They struggled and danced wildly within the tissues beneath his skin. Luo Nan loosened his hand, and a sharp shriek immediately exploded. Ah! Chapter 650. Perhaps Luo Nan's way of expressing himself was a bit special, but Yueyin wasn't able to respond in time. In the garden, Huang Bingjin's ear-piercing screams quickly exceeded the tolerance of the atmosphere. Under the effects of drugs and lust, the flesh worms that were tangled and tossed about together finally had a bit of a distraction. Since Luo Nan and his group didn't deliberately block the surrounding view angles, a small portion of the people nearby saw this scene through the gaps in the crowd. Frankly speaking, Huang Bingjin's current physical state was really challenging the psychological and physiological limits of a normal person. No one knew who started it, but the screams that were filled with fear spread like a contagious disease. The inferior version of the Garden of Eden collapsed. Some people started to run, while others frantically called security. Of course, there were more people who had just woken up from their daze. They had only blended into the chaos, but they did not know the source of the chaos and what the truth was. As for the source itself, Huang Bingjin was still struggling. He himself was not too clear-headed, so he was only entangled in the pain itself. He was completely unaware that his body was withering at an alarming rate. It really is a mutation. From the changes in Huang Bingjin's body, Bamboo Pole found more direct evidence. Biological mutation was a process of changing one's nature. After that, one would be able to obtain power that exceeded the conventional limits. From this perspective, it was not impossible to describe it as evolution. However, this process was still unable to break away from the basic logic of life. Any evolutionary change would definitely require energy, and the process of distortion would require even more energy. The bodies of normal people and normal creatures could not support such consumption at all. Once they entered the mutation process, they would be driven by the instinctive desires of living creatures, hunting and eating in a frenzy to replenish the huge consumption of energy needed for the mutation. Due to the relatively low efficiency of their feeding channels and digestion, a considerable number of creatures that entered the mutation process could not make it past this hurdle. In the end, they died due to the hilarious reason of malnutrition. On the contrary, if it could evolve into a highly efficient eating mode and obtain abundant energy in time, it would represent the birth of a new mutant species. As for Huang Bingzhen's current situation, it was obviously impossible. Hungry. Huang Bingzhen's throat was dry and hoarse. As his body shriveled up, he struggled less and less, looking like a starving corpse on the verge of death. On the other side, He Yueyin didn't bother Luonan. Instead, she opened up the mission channel mode to communicate with multiple parties. She used this to contact Zhang Yingying and let her open up a shared view mode. After having an intuitive understanding of the scene, He Yueyin quickly made a suggestion. Give this person a nutrition injection, at least 3 units. Otherwise, it will be difficult to avoid sudden death. Zhang Yingying and Bamboo Pole both looked at Luonan. At once, a military cadet came forward and injected Huang Bingzhen with a military-grade nutrient injection that he carried with him. Following He Yueyin's suggestion, he injected 3 times the dosage in one go. When the stimulant medicine entered his body, it took effect very quickly. Huang Bingzhen's turbid eyes even began to focus, and he became slightly more clear-headed. However, in a sense, this was a more painful torture. It was different. The situation in front of him was completely different from what Huang Bingzhen had imagined. There was nothing in common. How did he end up like this? His eyes focused on the young man in front of him who still had hair on his body. His figure turned from blurry to clear, and the corresponding hatred and fear were like giant hammers, bombarding the walls of his will again and again. Soon, the little bit of clear-headedness he had collapsed. The destructive emotions still didn't let him go. They continued to bombard him callously until all of his thoughts were smashed into smithereens. Huang Bingzhen began a new round of screams. Tears and snot flowed out amidst his screams. They mutually conflicted with his primal desires, dissolving them. This also doomed him to a great failure in this round of mutation process. Aside from the lack of energy, the mental plane doesn't have the ability to control it at all. The configuration I made overlooked this point. Luonan clairvoyantly interpreted the structural changes in Huang Bingzhen's body and soul. At the same time, he used the external neuron interface to collect the relevant raw data. He was very focused, and the gazes cast by the surrounding students became more and more complicated. It didn't seem too good to have such a person in charge of this project. Luonan didn't feel anything about this. He just pondered over the relevant technical issues. Perhaps the executing party isn't prepared to let the infected person enter the 3rd stage in a clear-headed state. But the material foundation is necessary. Then there should be some sort of energy supply system. Otherwise, if there were 3 or 5 more of these people, they would immediately become prey to a slaughter. After arriving at a preliminary conclusion, Luonan made some adjustments to the temporary configuration he made. He used it as a template to contrast it with the surrounding environment. This work wasn't done by manpower. The structure and environment of Cloud City Water Village were far too complex. There were countless possibilities under this background. Perhaps it was a floor, perhaps it was a room, but it could also be a large building, or even an entire large living area. Luonan very cleverly mobilized the supercomputing resources of the psychic wave network to conduct a similarity comparison. On the other side, Zhang Yingying, Bamboo Pole, and He Yueyin were working together to gather information on the reality plane. Zhang Yingying asked the person in charge of the club, "How much do you know about Huang Bingzhen's schedule?" The person in charge responded with fear and trepidation, "They will be having a party here. It will continue all the way past midnight. I don't know what happens after that." "What about that guest? That dark, skinny, and wild fellow that Chao Shanhai talked about?" He entered your club, and now he's gone. He was brought in by young Master Huang. Huang Bingjin. I really don't know the specifics. The person in charge of the club had no choice but to listen closely to Huang Bingjin's hoarse roar as he spoke. He forced himself to reply with a few words. His entire person was about to collapse. Zhang Yingying was annoyed looking at him. She waved her hand and said, "Forget it. Just pull up the surveillance footage." The person in charge immediately complained, "How could a place like this have? What about the entrances and exits?" Of course it does. The person in charge nodded over and over. He immediately contacted the monitoring room. Investigating the surveillance footage required a process, and it also required the participation of professionals. He Yueyin took the initiative to accept this task, and she quickly arranged everything properly. There are some things that need to be sorted out first. Bamboo Pole keenly sensed that Luo Nan had temporarily become idle. To prevent Luo Nan from immersing himself further, Bamboo Pole pulled Luo Nan to discuss problems. "Boss Luo, you said that Huang Bingjin's companion might be the most crucial character. According to my deductions, he might be a professional ability user and pharmacist. He used the mutant infection method to change the weak fleshly foundation of this pervert, Huang Bingjin. Then the question arises. Is this a special case, or is it one of countless cases? Is it an individual's practice, or is it a certain power?" With the supercomputing resources to substitute for verification, Luo Nan didn't mind chatting a bit. In any case, the first thing that came to my mind was the mutant invasion incident at Trigate Security. Yes. We must investigate in this direction. There's also a dangerous level. Extraordinary. Bamboo Pole felt a bit of a toothache as he spoke. He hadn't directly participated in the incident at the municipal plaza, but he had heard that the conflict was dangerous, something rarely seen in many years. That mysterious extraordinary Luo Yuan had even dared to assassinate President Ouyang. He had grasped the powerful clone technology, and he had the effect of having millions of clones. He had only caught a glimpse of such a powerful figure that day, and he never appeared again. But just like the planar crossbow hidden deep in the endless depths of space, once it was revealed, life and death would be decided. With the influence of a high-level character, premature and excessive judgments would only reveal a shallow side. The topic of discussion didn't continue in the end, but the sudden mention of Luo Yuan made Luo Nan think a bit more. When Luo Yuan first appeared, he was actually communicating with Moya and the others. This clue could even be traced back to the Manching Music Festival in October. Was this fate, or was it part of some unknown cause and effect? Luo Nan had to admit that with a powerful figure like Luo Yuan in front of him, he could clearly feel the pressure that came from the plane of reality. Also, the short chain that extended from Huang Bingjin had also pulled Moya into it. He couldn't help but think, was Huang doing this on a whim, or was he plotting something else? Luo Nan searched Huang Bingjin's mental plane, but because this fellow's consciousness was too chaotic, he didn't obtain any meaningful results. I don't have a clue. Luo Nan really didn't like this kind of passive guessing game. Most importantly, this wasn't his field of expertise. Boss. Huh. This time it was Zhang Yingying who called out to him. She seemed to have seen through his thoughts. She beamed and said, "I've already notified Octopus. Cat Eyes is there as well. She's currently deploying her power. She has to be worthy of the danger level. Let's not talk about other things, but for trash like Huang, not even 8 or 10 of them will have the chance to touch your sister." Thanks. Luo Nan wasn't really worried about the safety of Moya and the others. After all, Rui Wen was still there. With this little girl here, their counterattack ability against potential threats would increase by at least 2 or 3 levels. Moreover, their early warning ability and long-range coordination ability were all top-notch. This was no different from Luo Nan being there himself. Luo Nan thought of one thing when he saw Zhang Yingying. The firm should be following up on the matter of the mutant invasion. Peony is fully in charge of it. She recently went on a long trip, and it's related to this matter. It's just that the confidentiality level of the matter is quite high, so I don't know too much about it. Oh, there are things in the firm that you don't know about. Luo Nan casually teased. Luo Nan thought of how he and the mysterious peony had limited means of communication. Aside from the temporary channel they used when they were executing the mission back then, there was actually no signal at all. Only the heavens knew why Her Majesty Empress Wu wanted to play this game. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.